What is up, Flannelverse? We have a standard BBM draft stream today. Going to do a couple BBM drafts, but I'm excited to, for the first time, have one of my favorite analysts on. First time ever doing a show with Ben Gretch, who, of course, you probably know him from his content with Pete. But my one of my favorite pieces of content last summer, Ben was a part of with Mike Leone, going over all of the NFL divisions one by one. Was just, I found super informative. I love that type of content where you're just hearing two sharp people, kind of comparing notes on their projections for a season. I thought it was really informative, really kind of shows you where there is maybe some vulnerability in rankings, in projections, etc. Just hearing Ben and Mike talk about how they projected teams in each division was really, really great last year. And from what I understand, it's going to be happening again this year. Ben, love to have you on. Thank you very much for coming into the Flannelverse. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing good. I told you when in Rome, I had to bust out my flannel. Leone and I are going to be starting that pretty soon. I think we're going to do our first couple in the early part of July. Then we both have some overlapping family vacations in like the second week of July, and then hit the rest of them sort of in the later part of July. But yeah, we both do our go through our projections for each of the teams. Compare, contrast where we're similar, where we're different in terms of what we're expecting from play volume and down to the player level. Like you said, we do them eight shows, 8 different divisions, every team, break them down. Pretty, down to a pretty granular level.
Yeah,
and
pretty
really
in-depth.
Get into
you go a couple hours on each division, as I recall.
Yeah,
about 2 hours.
At least an hour. Yeah. I mean, we'll see how long. I don't know if we'll go 2 hours, but yeah, it'll be fun. That's one of my favorite projects every off season with him. But yeah, glad to be on here with you as well. Appreciate the invite.
What's funny is I actually, I will say, there was one division that I never found last year. Like I went back several times. I was like, I forget which one it was. Like, where is the AFC South? Whatever. There was one division that I, for whatever reason, could not find last year. I'm sure it was there. I thought about like reaching out to Leone, and then got too close to the season. I just didn't end up bothering. But I'm sure that was just on me for whatever reason. I could not find that division. But I was like, I loved it. Like I listened to some of them multiple times, or just like we'd go back. Like, I want to hear that conversation again. It was super informative. Would highly recommend that content to anybody. I also, I didn't say it before the stream. I was going to tell you, Ben, there is a non-zero chance that I may have concussed myself today. Nice. So I totally blanked on the name of your show with Pete, which of course, ship chasing. I have a ship chasing hat. I was like, his content with Pete Overs, that as we started, I'm just a little bit like, my words are not coming to me today. I could not remember the name.
How did you concuss? Did you bang your head?
Yes. So it's I wish I could tell you I got into a bar fight, like some cool story. I was playing sports. No, we have my garage has a door. So it has a side door where we keep the lawnmower. It was there when I moved in, but the door is just short, just like a little bit short. And this is at least the second time I've banged my head on this door. So what happens is I go in, I get my lawnmower, and it's, at this point I know this short. When I'm like getting the lawnmower, I remember you got to duck real low, get under the door. However, I ran out of gas while I was mowing today, so I had to go back in there to get the gas canister. And of course, I'm speeding along and just completely forget. The problem is I've learned, I just started wearing a hat like as an adult, because I've been balding. Became a hat guy as an adult. There's like you can't see what's right here. So it's just like I have issues with doors that are too short, that are just short enough that they're above the bill of my hat, but below my head. It's the second time on this door. I actually at a live final for DraftKings, I've had the same issue before. Travis Petty has reminded me several times that he saw me just bash my head into the door. But today I was a little bit, I was nervous enough that I told my wife after I finished mowing. I came back in and told my wife, just so you know, I banged my head pretty hard while I was out there. But I think I'm okay. It's been a couple hours at this point. I'm probably fine. Just wanted to forewarn you, if I'm like struggling with my words, if I pass out midstream, may have concussed myself.
Who do I call?
I don't know. Call Minneapolis, St. Paul police, I guess. I don't know. Hopefully my wife will notice that I have not been speaking, and she'll tell somebody. You have my permission, Ben, to just like leave the room. Like, you don't have to worry about me. You just go away, because there's really nothing you could do. You're not in my state. What are you gonna do? I don't know.
Man, and look, I did a 3-hour stream earlier on my own channel over the Stealing Signals channel, so I don't know that the words are going to come to me particularly well after streaming this much today. So it'll be fun. We'll just kind of
Long
talk in
day for
circles.
Ben. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Uh, Justin Steele, of course, always got to give Justin a shout out whenever he shows up in the channel. Chicago Cubs All Star Justin Steele has given me permission, has given me the command. I don't know. He says, Neil, you can lose a button. That's a good call. Ben, I don't know. I don't have AC in my office, so that's why I'm wearing this fake flannel with the short sleeves, not real flannel. I hope that you have AC because you look like you're wearing a real flannel
I
today.
do. Yeah, it is. It's going to get warm in here because it does still get hot in here, but we got AC in the house. So
Yeah.
It stays at least pretty cool, which is nice.
We got AC in the bedroom and in my wife's office. My office, I just usually it's not a huge issue, but it is hot today. I'm struggling a little bit with the heat also. But I think losing the button helps. So thank you for that, Justin. All right, we are going to jump into a draft right away. Hopefully, get through two together. Of course, I'd love to have Ben stay for both of these drafts. If you, Matthew Wiley, now telling me you want me to button it back up, or do you want me to lose another button? You got to be more specific. We're going to jump right in. If you guys want to jump into this best ball mania with me and Ben, jump in right now. I'm getting in. Ben, I feel like some of your strongest player takes, one of the player takes that I associate with you this year is Javonte Williams, and I feel like I was pretty out on it for a while. I was like, I said it on my stream. I was like, I know that he's a guy that Ben Gretch is really high on. I have a ton of respect for Ben, but I'm not going with him on Javonte Williams. I've capitulated a little bit since then. I think you have somewhat convinced me, along with just like the chatter from the Broncos early on. I kind of thought Javonte Williams was really at risk of losing his job entirely. So I was like, I don't really want to spend the money there. I'm going to take the cheap guys later on, the Jaleel McLaughlin, the Audric Estime. But I have the chatter seems to be in favor of your take, your pro Javonte take. How much? What percentage are you at of Javonte these days?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. I think somewhere in the 20s, 25% probably. I've been taking a lot of Estime as well. I'm certainly not completely all in on Javonte, but if you look at Peyton's career, I mean, I do think there's going to be a committee there, and it doesn't concern me a ton. I think the ways that committees can play out are important to think through. The situations where there's not a huge pie in terms of running back scoring for a variety of reasons. I always look at it from the stat that I've talked about for a few years is high value touches, which is receptions plus touches inside the 10-yard line. So touchdowns and the pass catching. And the pass catching, you're going to get a point per reception or a half point per reception plus more yardage typically on every reception. So they're worth quite a bit more than rush attempts. And then obviously the goal line stuff, you can convert a touchdown.
Do you like Jefferson
here? Yeah, I tend to take Jefferson here, but I would go with any of those top three guys. But yeah, let's do Jefferson. So I think about it in terms of high value touches. When I did the research on that a few years back when I was at CBS, it was in I think it was the 3 years prior, it was about 25% of all touches were for running backs were receptions and or touches inside the 10-yard line, and the other 75% were rush attempts in the other 90 yards of the field, further away from scoring a touchdown. And yet more than half of the fantasy points scored by running backs came on that 25% subset of touches. It was about 60-40. 60% of all points coming on those 25% of touches. That's the real thing. And so I've argued ever since that we shouldn't just think of workloads in terms of touch count. We should think about it in terms of the high value touches, the passing down works plus the goal line stuff. You want the early down stuff as well to build out, overall yardage over the course of a game. It's great if they have 20 touches, but a lot of these backs like a Jahmyr Gibbs, who's going at the end of the first round, maybe won't get a lot of early down rushing, and it's not that big of a deal. That's a lot of pounding. Maybe that's less of an injury risk for him. It's a lot of pounding he's not having to take. If he catches passes, if he gets some opportunities to score touchdowns, he's going to have plenty of value. And then obviously the efficiency element for him and players like him is a huge part of it too. But, in these committee situations, the ones that I think are worth buying into are the ones where the pie of high value touches is very high. And for the Broncos, last year, they led the NFL in running back targets with Russell Wilson at quarterback. He's a guy who never really threw to running backs much throughout his career leading into last year. You go back to the days with the Saints Over 15 years, they were in the 84th percentile or higher every single season of those 15 years that Sean Payton coached the Saints. With Drew Brees. And some of that could have been just purely Drew Brees, right? But
Sure.
there's one other season that he didn't have Drew Brees. It was mostly Taysom Hill. They didn't throw to the running back quite as much. Taysom Hill was running a lot. But the 15 years in a row with Brees over that like Sean Payton Saints era, they were in the 84th percentile of team seasons for that 15-year block. There's 480 team seasons in that block. They were all top 70 of those 480 team seasons in running back targets. And a bunch of them are in the top 10, like they had second most, third most. Like every season, it was running back targets, running back targets, running back targets. That's what Sean Payton's offense is all about. And that's what Bo Nix did a ton of last year. He broke the completion percentage record for college football. He had a low ADOT, which is what he's gotten knocked for. He was willing. He didn't really push the ball down the field. He's willing to take comfortable underneath throws.
Anybody like here with J Jets? Yeah, we got by ADP, it's Ayuk, Devontae, Jalen.
I tend to go Devontae or Waddle here over Ayuk. Comfortable either way.
All right, I'm good with let's go Devontae here.
The reasoning being, Devontae literally had 70 more targets than Ayuk last year. I know Ayuk's incredibly good, but you're talking about 105 targets. I don't know where the rest of those targets are going to come from. You really need his efficiency was insane last year. And I don't typically bet against efficiency. You're not going to hear me talk about regressing efficiency. He's a good player, but it's not like he can get much better. He was a 3+ yards per out run guy, 13 yards per target. Incredible numbers. It's more likely to come down than go up even higher. The volume is the real concern. There's a lot of talk about trade. I don't think the trade's going to happen, but probably anyway, not. The Broncos backfield with Nix now, I think has the potential to go even higher. They led the NFL in running back targets, but there were some years there with the Saints where they were pushing 200. Last year they had 153. I think we could have a season where there's 170, 180, or even up towards 200 running back targets. You're talking about a rookie QB, and Peyton's probably going to coach him into the more conservative, high percentage passes. They like to use as an extension of the run game, as you would call it. And if there's that much pass volume in this offense, the high value touches are going to be there. It's not going to be as huge of a deal if it's a split. I do feel confident that Javonte Williams is going to be the heavy side of a split, even if it's a 3-way split. Maybe that's only 45% or 50% of the snaps, but he's going to get plenty of high value touches at 45 or 50% of this particular offense, as opposed to, some of the offenses with a mobile quarterback that aren't going to throw to the running back as much. The quarterback's going to take off and run. The Eagles, for example, if that's a committee in those years that it's been a committee, it's not great for anyone. I'm Diggs here pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I'm good with Diggs.
It looks like that's true by your ranks as well. Are these your ranks that you have uploaded? Okay, cool.
I'm trying to. It's not my ranks. It is, I think, ETR. I go back and forth between ETR and Leg Up enough that I don't remember what the latest rankings that I entered in here are. But it's sure. one of those. We'll probably be able to figure out once we get to around pick 100. See if Josh Palmer's there.
Yeah. Structurally speaking, I love getting the three receivers to start because I like getting the elite tight end in like 4 or 5 in those ranges. It's a really nice start. I think Diggs his price is nice now that he's fallen into the 3rd round. He's probably kind of the end of a tier at this point there, where like I like Kupp too, but you're starting to talk about maybe a little bit of a different tier. But anyway, I like this 3 receiver start. There's some paths for Diggs to actually step in and be the number 1, and I don't think they're being baked into the market at all. I think people are very, very confident that Nico and Tank are the guys, and I think that's very likely to be the case. They were incredible last year in this offense with Stroud, but Diggs has been a really good alpha volume earner his entire career, including last year. He just wasn't as efficient last year in a way that like it took Nico a couple years to build up to. Yeah, there's some questions about whether those other guys are at the level of Diggs in terms of like, consistent volume earning and all that. I think they're all going to be very good and efficient. I love the Houston passing game, but I think that's an out for Diggs that I like to take him. I usually am not taking a lot of older guys, but I think you get a great price on Adams this year. You get a great price on Diggs. These guys earn a lot of volume.
Yeah, I guess we're going kind of older with J Jets being our youngest wide receiver of the top 3. I honestly don't know what to make of the Houston receivers in terms of like pecking order. I guess I'm making the assumption that they're all going to have opportunities, and I'd basically draft them according to ADP just because I'm going to have a big enough portfolio that I want to have exposure to all of them. But do you have any? I know you do your team evals with the wheel at the end of your streams. I don't know if you've done Houston yet. Do you have a strong read on the pecking order there?
I think we did do Houston fairly recently, and I don't have a strong read. No, I think there's a lot of ways it could play out. I think by cases relative to cost, the market is too certain that Diggs can't be the number one. Basically,
right. It's kind of tough to have a read on it because we haven't seen it before. I suppose it's like
right.
Nobody's going to have a really great read on it at this point.
And the big argument I made is targets per out run's a stat I cite a lot, and then weighted targets per out run is one we're back up.
We are back up.
For me, typically this is where I just jump into Trey McBride. Like I
love Trey
McBride's my tight end one. Like I'm pretty high.
Stand out to me there. Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's any. Yeah, with this, I feel like there's a little bit of a tier gap before McLaurin. Like if we had Higgins there, I might take Higgins, or if Cooper had made it to this pick, I might have thought about that. But McBride over McLaurin feels like the pick to me.
It's always tricky there in the late fourth where you're thinking through the tight end or kind of letting the tight end come around. But then if McBride and Andrews go, are you willing to take Pitts at 505? Because if you don't take Pitts there, you might not get Kittle coming back in the sixth. I tend to want to get an elite tight end into my build. So
do you feel strongly about McBride over Mark Andrews? I'm just saying because we have Diggs, like we could have, if you felt the same, maybe we should have got Andrews. But you feel strongly. Yeah, to me, I have them in a tier together, but you like McBride quite a bit over Andrews. I usually do take McBride over Andrews unless I think I can also get Lamar Jackson, but that's just I don't know, not necessarily a tier thing so much as I want to have a lot of exposure to both.
McBride had a 2.03 yards per out run last year. That was like meaningfully better than even Sam Laporta. Andrews was close, 1.96. But we are almost back on the clock. We'll talk about this in a sec. This is an interesting spot. Like the running backs are ranked highest. I still don't want to break the seal on running back typically at this point, and I tend to go like Keenan Allen or one of the other receivers. Do you mind clicking the wide receiver tab?
Yep.
Oh, Xavier Worthy is the other one I often take here. That's maybe a little early.
We could go Worthy if you want to.
Let's do it because I think with the older receivers that we already have in this build, you have a lot of like guaranteed targets, right?
Yeah.
The Worthy idea is you're swinging for a pretty big breakout. There could be some play volume, play like snaps concerns early in his I meant to say play time, snaps concerns early in his season. But I mean, this is a guy who, like, I think a lot of people are sleeping on. They think he's just another speedster, and there's been a lot of speedsters that have failed at the NFL level. He had a really good age-adjusted production profile before running the fastest time in the combine history. He's a good player. And then they traded up in the first round to get him. He's not just like another, Sky Moore or whatever. Like I was in on Sky Moore too. The reasons you should be in on KC receivers still exist, like Patrick Mahomes and the number one pass rate over expected like 5 years running. That matters. Volume and efficiency in the passing game matters. If a receiver hits here, he hits in a way that is more meaningful than in other offenses. That still is all there, but also this is a guy who has a really good prospect profile coming out of Texas, played at a high, in a big conference, played all the way into the college football playoff, right? And then, earned volume in different roles, was a deep threat early in his career, moved to a more shallow role when Adonai Mitchell transferred and took on the deep threat role, which to me was like Texas saying, we want to get him the ball, so we're going to get him the ball underneath more because Quinn Ewers really struggled to throw down the field. I mean, a lot of the stuff about where the efficiency is not exactly where you want it to be, but the target earning really was. And I mean, a lot of stuff about Worthy, I think you got to be pretty excited about.
And so are you Worthy over Hollywood all day? It sounds like you're pretty high on Worthy. So it's just, you're always clicking Worthy before Hollywood.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm always clicking it, sure. But
it's your preference.
Worthy, I think, is my highest drafted player right now.
Wow.
Certainly, I think wide receiver. It's him and Rashee Rice. I think the Kansas City receivers are collectively mispriced. And I am drafting Hollywood a little bit above overweight on him, too. Like, I'm taking all of them. If Travis Kelce's a fourth-round pick now, then the wide receivers are mispriced. That's just like, again, we're talking about the offense that is number one in pass rate over expected, like 5 years running, and has a really efficient quarterback pulling the trigger as well. Like the statistical ceiling there is really exciting. So especially if we're at Travis Kelce's no longer our first round pick levels. He's not going to play as much. He's not going to run as many routes. We're worried about his health. He might hit an age cliff. I mean, either you think Kelce is the most mispriced player in fantasy, or you have some issues with the wide receiver pricing, I would say.
Sure. We could go Stroud here at 68 if we wanted to. Slight
I like
fall.
it. Yeah. He's been sliding for a while. He used to be like a 4-5 turn guy. Then he fell down to like the 5-6 turn. We're getting him well into round 6, stacked up with Diggs.
Yeah.
I like that.
It feels more like this is where he should be. Like, do you agree that he like the fall is warranted, but now he's more like about where you want to take him?
I think the fall was probably fair. For a drop back passer, you have to have just really elite efficiency and passing numbers. The pass TD rate's got to be super high. The yardage per game's got to be super high. I do think in an era where defenses are playing more cover 2 shells, or taking away the big plays, quarterbacks can't throw for as many yards, he could kind of run away and hide from the rest of the league in terms of passing stats. Like, he could be really an elite asset. He was good last year. Then he had some really down games mixed in there, like you'd expect from a rookie. If he's more consistent, and they've added Diggs, they really feel like they're pushing in right now in this rookie QB contract window that they have. I think the Texans are like one of the biggest threats to the Chiefs in the AFC. Like, I've actually argued that they are the second biggest threat to win the AFC. I've in my betting company over at Stealing Lines, I've had the crew placing bets on the Texans futures to win the Super Bowl. I mean, I think they went and added front 7 pieces. They added Danielle Hunter. They added Azil Al-Shair, Danico Autry. Like, they're making moves. They're going to be good this year.
Do you like Ladd here? Do you want to go running back? What do you think?
I think at this point, the price on Kenneth Walker is really nice.
I like
it's a great spot to get. Yeah. I mean, the room didn't make us pay really. We went 4 receivers, an elite tight end, and an elite QB, and we also get Kenneth Walker as our RB1.
Are you a Seahawks fan?
I'm not. I'm from Seattle, but I'm not really a fan of.
I think I knew. Yeah.
Yeah. Of any. I grew up a Vikings fan. My grandpa was a big time Vikings fan, and then a Huskies football fan. I'm Huskies football, Seattle Mariners. I was a big time Sonics fan as a kid. They don't exist anymore.
I was aware of your Seattle roots, which I was like, wait, is he a Seahawks fan? I felt like there was something where it wasn't quite like lined up where you're all a fan of all the same. That's right.
That was the one team growing up. My grandpa was a big Vikings fan. He got me on the Vikings as a kid. And,
do you have roots in Minnesota?
Both my parents are from Montana, so they root for the Minnesota teams. My mom lived on the very east side of Montana, grew up on a farm. That's where my grandpa, that grandpa, my mom's dad, farmer by trade. And it's like an hour from the, not even an hour. I don't know how far from the North Dakota border, but and then right across North Dakota, you get to Minneapolis. So they rooted for Minnesota teams. He's a Twins fan too, but that never stuck. Cool. Probably because we had Ken Griffey Jr. in Seattle when I was a kid. So it's easier to be a Mariners fan, but the Vikings were a team I was into. Chris Carter was my favorite player. I still have my really old Chris Carter jersey. It was before Randy Moss came along. Then when Moss came along,
yeah, I'm in Minnesota. I'm a Vikings fan also.
Okay,
I'm a fan of all the Minnesota sports teams. But plus the Cubs at this point. Actually, I watch more Cubs than Twins because of Justin Steele. I like watching his starts. But
nice.
At least theoretically, also a Twins fan. But a huge Vikings and Timberwolves fan in particular.
Nice. Yeah. That's where my. So, I mean, I do have family that also lives in North Dakota, and then some that extended over to Minneapolis, some that even extended into Wisconsin. So, yeah, that whole area is kind of I was just back in Montana this past weekend visiting my grandma. So that was fun.
Nice. Well, if you ever make it to the Twin Cities and looking for something to do, hit me up. Will do.
But yeah, I love this Walker price we got. 10 picks behind ADP in a 0 RB build. Yeah. I think the guy at the one turn goes Najee Warren back to back. I think the pocket of running backs you can get really justifies the 0 RB builds like the one that we have done here. The fact that we get Walker to fall into that, like sort of behind
Yeah,
The wide
behind those
receiver
two.
window is pretty crazy. You used to be able to get Rashee Rice and JSN in the
I
seventh
know.
round. That's when I would make that pick. Both those guys are now going in the sixth here in this draft. You see Deontay Johnson in the early seventh. I've been advocating over at Chip Chasing for the last couple streams that trio should be going ahead of the Lad McConkey group. Looks like that's been flipping. I'm doing all the slow drafts, so I haven't been
Yeah.
seeing that flip in real time, but we're all looking for the guy who did that. But
Yeah,
I've been literally
exactly.
making that specific point. I see that that's happening now.
Yeah. Yep. Seems like the drafters are agreeing with you now, or
Yeah.
they like the point you made. Yeah, that can happen. Certainly, I think ship chasing, I think can move the market a little bit when you guys talk about specific players. Of course, Jake Ferguson, a guy that you guys can't move the market because you're all in disagreement on Jake Ferguson. We don't need to go there here. Anybody you particularly like here?
Could you hit the wide receiver tab real quick? I mean, I'm thinking
Yep.
Sutton because we only do have the 4 or Lockett. Oh, I mean, I think Lockett's a pretty interesting play. We do have the Kenneth Walker play as well. We're kind of betting on Seattle's
True.
offense. I
I
like
don't hate
Lockett
that.
more than Sutton
I
for
think I do
some of the
too.
reasons I was talking about with Bo Nix. I don't know that they're going to really push him to throwing down the field. I think there's going to be a lot of running back targets in that offense this year, man.
Yeah.
But I mean, I still think Sutton can be solid. He's a pick I would make if Lockett wasn't on the board. I think Lockett's still a pretty intriguing play. I mean, I do think JSN's a good pick and a breakout play. I guess I'm more fading Metcalf at price. I think they're
Oh,
all
are you?
three going to be fairly balanced in. Ryan Grubb is. I'm a Huskies fan. He's taken over. He's the OC at UW last year. Been asked a bunch of times how I think that's going to go. I'm not entirely sure how I think it's going to go, but they did at UW. They did a lot of motion, a lot of misdirection. I thought it was a really intelligently designed offense, but they also did a lot of different formational stuff, and that's all great. But it also led to balance, I think, across the market shares and across the target spectrum. Dunze really elevated, and maybe Metcalf can, but I do think there's going to be situations where like the play design is just going towards Lockett more than I think the market is expecting.
All right. Here's ADP.
So this for me is either Brock Bowers getting him locked in, and just being done at tight end, or one of these running backs. I think it's probably Bowers because I
Zamir
think
White has the
running
same
backs
bias,
we can
Kenneth
get on the
Walker.
way back. What's
Yeah.
that?
Zamir White has the same bias. Kind of. I'm kind of a
Okay.
bye week bro. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great.
I'm
That's a
into it.
great point. Yeah. So then, like, a lot of my builds wind up looking like this. I have 2 tight ends through this point. I don't usually have a quarterback at this point, but sometimes do. And frequently I have 0 running backs, and I have the 6th receiver. Lockett gave us 5 here. But then after this point, 10, 11, 12, almost all of my drafts are featuring running backs. And I just think it's a really nice pocket in this range. I think some of the guys that have already gone off are all really nice picks relative to cost in the last round. Swift, James Conner, Jonathan Brooks, Zach Moss are all underpriced in my opinion. Raheem Mostert just led the NFL in touchdowns last year with 21. We're just apparently all assuming that he's definitely going to get hurt because the guy who had 21 TDs to lead the NFL last year is going in the 9th round the next season. That's definitely never happened in fantasy football history.
Yeah, kind of nuts.
There's a lot of guys, and Warren is another one that you really like. Typically goes there. He went so high in this draft that we got a great price on Walker, who's kind of a tier higher and typically comes before that little drop off in the wide receiver group. This is an interesting build, but those are the running backs I start to hit. That group is going to extend. We've already been talking about Javonte. He's going to be certainly on my list as we get here in round 10. Tyjae Spears, Chase Brown, those guys are all, I think, really nice targets. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to build out our running back group. And I don't feel like, so Javonte does go, I don't feel like you get super punished for pushing running back this year because of this pocket of value here.
It is so like you're kind of forced into this build this year. And I've had this conversation with many people because a lot of us come from the DFS space or even like, within best ball, people are looking for ways to get unique, like fade the noise, fade what, all of the analysts are saying. People want to I want to forge my own path, do something different. But so many people have asked me well, what do you think of just, what if we slam running back early, try to get different in the market, but you're kind of forced into this build because of everybody doing the same thing with the wide receivers early. And it really does, it pushes down all of these running backs that I'm in agreement with you that like I love this range of running backs starting in like 7th, 8th round. You start getting great running backs who probably are going to lead their team much lower than the guys obviously like you get the starters in the second or third round that maybe you're slightly more confident in, but like I still have a pretty good amount of confidence in the running backs that go in this range. And then even like the next couple rounds, I feel like there's some good values, good bets to make. So yeah, I
Yeah,
love
and we
this kind of
lose all
draft.
those exciting names I was mentioned, Javante and
Yeah,
Tajay and Chase Brown all go. But I mean, look at like Devin Singletary is the top running back right now. I do think that the Giants' offense is probably going to bounce back this year. I do think Malik Neighbors 2 years ago they were actually a good offense. I mean, Singletary's the pick for me if you're comfortable with it.
I like
He
Singletary.
looks like the clear lead. People are down on Tyrone Tracy, who I was drafting a lot of earlier. But if you're down on Tracy, I promise you, Eric Gray is not the answer. This dude ran like a 4.65 40. He's
No,
not
it's
a
Jacob
particularly.
Sailors is the answer.
What's that?
I said Jacob Sailors is the answer. I'm a UFL fan, so I gotta love the Jacob Sailor signing.
That was, yeah. And I think I tweeted, does anyone know if this guy's good or something like
Yeah,
that when he came out?
yep.
Because that is a situation where somebody who comes in and is good can honestly make noise pretty quickly. It wouldn't surprise me if Jacob Sellers actually has an impact this season. The Giants running back depth chart is not strong, but Devin Singletary knows the offense from his time in Buffalo with Dable. I mean, he's just going to be a stable, solid, productive lead back, I think, for most of the year.
Yeah. It was good last year in Houston. I mean, they loved him.
Yeah. Yeah. He's always been pretty solid. I mean, he's been a pretty efficient player. He's not like particularly great in the receiving game, which is kind of weird because he's a smaller back, but he's a good runner. Like he's an efficient runner who also hits on some explosive plays. And, it's not that hard to be like moderate in the receiving game, like make some plays in the receiving game. He's the clear veteran. Like I do think Tyrone Tracy's a threat to him on the passing downs. He was a former receiver in college, changed positions. They drafted him in the 5th round this year. He's the guy that I'm like looking at if it's not Singletary, but Singletary's probably just going to be a solid win rate player at this price. Like, I mean, it's not a problem to take him there, in my opinion.
I've got quite a bit of Singletary. Yeah, just seems like pretty good bet. Get the starting running back on a potential bounce back team in around pick like 120. I'll take that all day.
Right.
I'm more into Gus Edwards than I think most analysts are. I forget what your take is on Gus Edwards, but I'm open to taking.
I tend to play them cheaper, but if you want to take Gus, I have. Oh, he went.
He went. Oh, yeah.
So, click running back real quick. I would be actually behind the Eckler. So I'd probably go down to. We don't Walker. So I'd go down to Kendre Miller at this point.
Oh yeah, love that.
And I'm very comfortable with that. He was a 21-year-old rookie last year. Was banged up. He's going into his age 22 season. They just used the day 2 pick on him a year ago. And yes, he was hurt a lot last season. He was back and healthy for week 18. Had a solid week 18. And again, young. The point I'm trying to emphasize with the age 21 season last year, just turned 22 in June here. Very young player. They didn't add to the backfield. The idea would be that they're thinking through this as like, yeah, Kendre Miller is a part of our future backfield. Jamal Williams, 2.9 yards per carry last year, showed that he's not the guy as the backup. Alvin Kamara is still the starter, but he's making waves a little bit, talking about wanting a new contract. They're probably not going to pay him. He's an older dude. Like, I think Kendre Miller internally is probably part of the next solution at the position, right? I mean, Alvin Kamara is not getting any younger either. I mean, if you told me to handicap it right now, I would argue that Kendre Miller is definitely the lead back at some point this season. Like not definitely, but is better than more than likely, more than 50% is going to be the lead back in some games this season. I don't know when or why that would happen. I would put that as a better than 50% odds situation. That week 18 game, 13 carries, 73 yards and a TD, caught a pass. He's pretty good in the pass game too. He made a really nice play on a downfield pass early in the season, and just one of the few games where he actually stayed healthy. He only played 4 games last year, only played more than 10 snaps in the game. Like he just was always hurt. Ideally, if he stays healthy in year 2 and is a big part of their offense.
Yeah, I'm super into Kendre this year. I worry that I'm making the same mistake that I made last year with fading Alvin Kamara. Like I was very out on Alvin Kamara last year. I thought he's going to miss time. He's probably There's no guarantee that he's going to be great when he comes back. And then, of course, he was one of a very, very good pick at ADP. What are you doing with Kamara this year? Are you drafting any Kamara, or are you just doing everything through Kendra Miller?
I've been doing everything through Kendra Miller, but I mean, you're right. Like that's probably 75 catches for Kamara last year. Like the other part of the Jamal Williams point I made is that Kamara could just be the dude. You know,
Right.
Kendra is obviously a lot cheaper. I tend to like the cheaper, younger player. I always make the point that there is no like, you know, guaranteed touches at running back, that if you're trying to wait until the time when you trust some type of statistic or trend in the NFL, that it's basically closer to the window closing than the window still being open. And so I'm always really comfortable betting on the change and the next guy taking over, because that's just the rule in the NFL. Like primes are not as long as people think. They're like 3 years. But I probably should be getting a little bit more of Kamara.
You mean for running back specifically, it's 3 years, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also the case that a lot of the high end receivers aren't like even great for much longer than that, 4 or 5 years. The really good ones can be for longer. So I mean, I'd still be in the running back situation. I would love to be getting Charbonnet here, but it doesn't make any sense in this build.
Yeah,
probably like in the Dowdle or Ty Chandler. Like I'm comfortable with both those guys.
Who do you like? Do you have any? I mean, we've got J-Jet, so I guess we could do Ty Chandler as part of that.
I'm comfortable either way. Dowdle could just lead that backfield.
I know. I do prefer like Dowdle is, to me, that there is kind of a tier break between them. So I think I couldn't do it with Ty Chandler on this one with Dowdle.
I do think Chandler's going to play a decent amount. Like Aaron Jones is a bigger threat than Zeke. So that's one reason. But Chandler was pretty good last year, and I don't think Aaron Jones is going to be like the clear workhorse. Like Ty Chandler's going to have standalone value. He's another reason you can get away with these types of zero RB builds. The guys that I really like that went in that round are Marshawn Lloyd and Kamani Vidal. Those would have been other really strong picks.
Kamani Vidal went three rounds ahead of ADP, right? That was, I mean, you said you like playing it cheaper with the Chargers guys, and then Kamani Vidal goes maybe not 3, maybe 2 rounds ahead of where you would expect him to go. I believe I've heard you say that you have drafted some J.K. Dobbins. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I have drafted some of him. I'm not like super in on him, but they're talking about him being healthy and he's so cheap. And it's like,
I know.
Me too. Gus Edwards is older than I think people realize and wasn't very efficient last year, and now loses the Lamar Jackson bump where like rushing quarterbacks actually positively influence the running efficiency. And I mean, yeah, he's going to know the offense. He's going to get the lead role. They brought him in. He knows Greg Roman's scheme. But the main reason he was effective last year was the 13 touchdowns. I'm like, yeah, he could continue to have touchdowns, but I'd be a little bit concerned about Gus Edwards. Like, and then relative to cost, it's just nice. Jalen Wright is a guy that I really like. I think he's probably the most valuable handcuff in fantasy. We just talked about Raheem Mostert scoring 21 TDs and probably being priced like everyone's certain he's hurt, going to get hurt.
Yep.
And Etienne had 11 TDs on his own alongside Mostert. The top 2 guys combined for 32 scores in this backfield last year. Then they drafted Wright, similar profile, explosive profile. Mike McDaniel knows how to get the guys that he wants to get the ball with speed and athleticism. He knows how to get them the ball. And you're talking about Etienne also spent time on IR last year. And then the whole market saying that Mostert can't stay healthy in age 32.
Right.
And if either of them goes down, probably Wright is like getting into the equation one way or another. I mean,
double contingent value,
30 touchdowns up for grabs potentially. I mean, he's a fun one to add to this build.
I know Debro is super into it. Debro in chat, if Gretch doesn't draft AJ Brown on the stream, are we sure this is even the real Gretch? I didn't realize you're that high on AJ Brown. Where are you taking him ahead of like pick 9, or are you just?
I'm not. I'm a long time AJ Brown bro, so I was really high on him as a rookie. I was even higher on him in year 2. When people were like, his rookie year efficiency can't build. That's when I wrote a really long piece about AJ Brown and kind of made my first big argument that like you don't fade the efficiency without understanding that like volume is increasing as well. Part of the reason that AJ Brown didn't get as much volume as a rookie is that he was housing every freaking target that he was getting. Like it's hard to get more targets when you've just scored a touchdown and you're back on the sideline. And he's just a star. He's a superstar. He's incredibly good. I was in on him multiple times early in his career. I was a little bit out on him last year, and it looked like I was really going to look stupid for that when he had the streak of 125-yard games. But
that's right.
The second half was a little bit
Worked out for you.
less exciting for
Yeah.
him. I take him, but I don't take him until he's actually one of the receivers in the first round that I have the least of, because I don't take him until both Puka and Garrett Wilson are gone.
Oh,
Garrett
wow.
Wilson to
Okay.
me is the target in that range. So
Yeah,
I get less AJ Brown as a result.
Garrett Wilson is somebody that, like, I, for whatever reason, does not feel like a fun click to me, but I've had enough sharp people tell me like Garrett Wilson's going too late that at this point I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take him at ADP. I can't quite put my finger on what it is about Garrett Wilson that like doesn't excite me. I think it's just like my bias against, I don't really like Aaron Rodgers. Now I'm like, well, maybe he's dusty. Maybe I'm wishing on his downfall a little bit, but I don't know what it is exactly that I'm like. Puka is definitely more exciting to me than Garrett Wilson. Maybe it's just that we've seen it, but again, as we know, Garrett Wilson playing with Zach Wilson last year, probably
Right.
haven't seen him really show out with the right quarterback yet.
Yeah, that's the hope at least. Yeah, I'm thinking wide receiver here as well. I mean, I just saw Franklin go. Is Marvin Mims coming up pretty quick? He's probably the pick for me, and I know it's maybe a little early, but the talk all offseason on him, I mean, like, so we didn't take Sutton earlier. The talk all offseason on him has been that they didn't play him. Like, before they traded Judy, it was Sean Payton saying it was our fault that he didn't play as much as he did as a rookie, but it's tough. He kind of plays the same position as Jerry Judy. Then they go trade Jerry Judy like a week later.
Right.
And then he's like, yeah, we're really excited to play Marvin Mims more. They did draft Troy Franklin, and that their skill sets are a little bit redundant, but they let him fall all the way into day 3. And then they traded up in round 4 to go get him. And yes, it is the guy who played very effectively with their first round rookie quarterback, Bo Nix, who I do expect to play quite a bit this year. But I mean, it seems like they're pretty into Mims. And then, I've been taking him a lot more than Franklin. I actually think he's probably going to play kind of a lot. And Franklin's going to be a little bit more developmental this year, the way that Mims was last year, and have to earn it.
Seems reasonable. Like I have struggled with that. The like, what do I do with Mims versus Franklin? Like, Troy Franklin could be anything. He could even be Marvin Mims. I feel like I'm doing that a little bit. Like, oh, he's just, we don't know what Troy Franklin is, but like, yeah, it feels like they have similar profiles, and Mims probably knows the offense a little bit better. So does feel like a better bet to me than Troy Franklin at this point. I go back and forth on which one I really want to attack. But I think your point is well made, that Mims probably a little bit undervalued at this point.
Yeah. I do feel like one of those two is going to wind up having some usable weeks, some spike weeks, some big plays. They're going to be, I think, high ADOT vertical passers, because that is the other part of the Sean Payton thing, is we're going to take some shots downfield to keep defenses honest. Then we're going to throw underneath. Right. And Nix actually did that effectively too. He was accurate down the field too. So I do just think he's a really good fit as a quarterback for this system. And I'm a little bit higher on them as a team than I think most. So Bucky Irving is my highest drafted running back overall.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I'm kind of just fading the Rachaad White lack of efficiency last year. I don't know that Bucky's definitely the dude. I know he didn't test well, but they took him like as the 6th back off the board this year over a lot of other like rookie backs that were still there. They seem to like him. And when they buy into it, then I'm buying into it. He was very effective in college. He's very productive. Caught a lot of passes. There's a lot of worry about his pass blocking, but like, he caught 50 plus balls last year, caught 90 plus in his college career. That's a meaningful receiving role, pass downs role in college, to be a guy who is like not capable of like the way the narrative is that he's not capable of playing on pass downs, but he caught 90 plus balls. So I'm kind of,
that has been my biggest concern with Bucky Irving, is the lack of pass blocking. I'm like, man, is this guy just not going to be able to be out there on passing downs? And then the fear is, if he can't be out there on passing downs, then he's just nothing. He's not worth anything if he's not catching balls. To me, which maybe that's incorrect, but that's been kind of my thinking as well. If he's not good enough at pass blocking to be out there on passing downs, then he's not going to be able to earn a role. But
so I think that there's a second path, which is that Rachaad White has been a super inefficient rusher. He's been a good receiving back, and I think that's underrated. But he was a 3.6 yards per carry guy last year, 3.7 the year before, and like dances in the backfield. His yards before contact are bad. Like, doesn't hit holes well. None of the advanced stuff says that he's good. There's like the rush yards over expected metric over at Next Gen Stats has him like 10th percentile, like horrible. There's no highly drafted running back that's anywhere close to as bad as him in those rushing metrics. That's the other side of it, is like, well, what if Bucky Irving is just taking early down rushes because he actually hits the hole and is explosive and I understand like he didn't test that way for a lot of people, but I think it's possible that Irving starts to take some of the early down work, and then it's like, okay, well, Rachaad White's playing on passing downs because he's better on passing downs, but now we're having to like make an effort to get Rachaad White onto the field, and that creates a little bit of a problem because like you almost just want to leave Irving on the field. But
fair point. I feel like we need to start thinking about our second quarterback here.
We do. Yeah, I was going to say, so structurally, we maybe even are thinking a 3 QB build. I don't know, but maybe not with Stroud.
We do have the
Knicks makes a lot of sense. What's that?
We do have the double Vegas. So if we could, we could go Knicks.
We can't do Knicks because we have week 14.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's the downside. Unless we do, if we do 3 QB, we could theoretically do it, but yeah, I don't know.
We click QB real quick. Who's available? Oh, and we can't do Drake May's already gone anyway.
We could do Levis and add on a Boyd or Chig.
That's super gross. But we could. Oh, JJ McCarthy, I think is the
what the hell? Yeah, that's I totally missed it. We have yes, that is a very
and then we could throw on Knicks if we wanted to make it a 3 QB, but like by week 14, McCarthy's starting.
Are you drafting any Vegas quarterback? Either Minshew or AOC?
My early offseason take was Minshew was going to be the dude. And because I actually think Minshew was better than people realized last year. And then like I talked to my buddy Jacob Sanderson a little bit, and he made a good case about AOC. And like you go look at his numbers last year, it was really good down the stretch. 8 touchdowns, 0 picks in his last like 4 starts. And he was immediately tabbed the starter once Antonio Pierce took over as the interim coach. And then Pierce got the full-time job this offseason. He started him the whole offseason. And now Pierce is the dude. It's kind of like, I mean, did he get the head coaching job because like he got O'Connell to play particularly well? And like that's their and it kind of explains why they didn't draft anyone or make a huge move to trade up and draft somebody. Like maybe they want to see what they have in O'Connell. I think O'Connell probably plays more this year. I've actually started to take O'Connell in the super flex formats more.
I've done it some in really time box contests also, but yeah, super flex. Yeah, I like him quite a bit. So we could throw an O'Connell on here too if we wanted to.
Let's save the QB3 discussion for the last round, maybe, because we do have both Knicks and O'Connell as options. But I would say we do need another receiver. We only have 6. Like Luke McCaffrey is a pretty solid option. For
Love me some Luke McCaffrey. Yeah.
Let's just throw him on as an exciting rookie. Really good agility testing, which is what you want out of a slot receiver. That's the testing that matters for a slot receiver. Obviously, like he basically tested the same as his brother Christian. Like, I mean, that's a good dude to have. His dad, Ed McCaffrey, for those who aren't aware, but I think most are, NFL wide receiver. Christian McCaffrey's always been a really good route runner when he splits out wide. Like seems like a legit slot receiver if he wanted to be one. Luke McCaffrey played some QB in college, didn't transfer over to receiver until later in college, but I mean, was pretty good at earning volume the last couple of years at Rice. And then he gets day 2 draft capital. Like, I think he's going to probably play a decent amount as their slot guy. I don't know how great of a fit he is with a mobile quarterback who's a downfield or run type guy. Like the underneath targets maybe aren't going to be super high there for Jaden Daniels, but I'm still like, I'm in on the profile for Luke McCaffrey.
Do you think Luke McCaffrey could overtake Jahan Dotson as the wide receiver 2 in Washington?
Yeah, I think he could in week 1. Jahan Dotson had a really rough second year. If you look at the advanced stuff, targets per out run, all that stuff, and his coming out of the draft, a lot of people were saying his profile in terms of his age-adjusted production, all that stuff in college was the weakest of the first-round rookies in that class. And he was going a little low in rookie drafts, and people were like, yeah, there's too much certainty that he's bad. Like, we should probably draft some of him. And then he had a good rookie year, particularly on the touchdown side. Didn't earn volume particularly well. The targets per out run, not great. Good, but not great. And he comes back this past year, and everything got worse. The efficiency got worse. The target earning got worse. Maybe that was just a sophomore slump. Maybe he rebounds. But, like, the guy, when you mentioned Tyler Boyd, the guy that I would argue if you want a third-year bounce back from a sophomore slump that had a better rookie year even is Treylon Burks. I would throw him on the back end of a Titans thing. He's probably not going to play. So like the difference is Jahan Dotson's probably going to play. Yeah. But like that's the profile that I would actually take a swing at, as opposed to like Dotson to me is way overpriced. So I do know we have the two Raiders players. I think we're probably going to get both the Raiders QBs at different points in the season. I probably
Right.
just prefer
Bo
Nix
Nix
because
is
I
going to
think the
play more.
starts are going to be there, and we're
Yeah.
not going to get the starts from McCarthy early
I'm good with that.
necessarily, right?
Yeah.
I think Nick starts week 1. I don't think JJ McCarthy does,
I do too.
and I think O'Connell probably does, but maybe doesn't. So we might as well, get the second QB.
Yeah. We just need McCarthy in there by week 14 for this build.
And he will be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a fun build in the end.
This is fun. I got a full disclosure. The reason I asked you that Luke McCarthy, Jahan Dotson question is because I thought you were gonna say that he could, because I was asked that question when I was on the Fantasy Dog Pound channel, and I said the same thing. I said, yeah, I could see Luke McCaffrey overtaking Jahan Dotson, and some dude who had watched clipped it and was just dragging me on Twitter, like sent like several tweets, like this guy thinks that Luke McCaffrey could overtake Jahan Dotson. I had to mute the guy. I was like, this is so obnoxious, but I was like, it wasn't even like a hot take. It was just like I was asked that question, could this happen? And I was like, yeah, I could see it happening, and I was pretty sure you were going to agree with that.
I mean, they're going to play different positions.
Right.
Yeah, people are. The blind certainty in the fantasy space is fantastic.
Clearly has him on a dynasty team or something and really believes in Jahan Dotson.
Right.
All right, I'll read off our team. If any of you are in this draft with us, and we do have several in chat in the draft with us, if you want to stick with your team, I can do that as well. Starting with our team, we have CJ Stroud, JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix at quarterback. Running back, we have Kenneth Walker, Devin Singletary, Kendra Miller, Rico Dowdle, Jalen Wright, Bucky Irving at wide receiver. We have Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Xavier Worthy, Tyler Lockett, Marvin Mims, Luke McCaffrey, and at tight end, Trey McBride and Brock Bowers. As far as correlations, we've got Stroud with just Diggs. We have McCarthy with just Jets. So we're doing some skinny stacks. Then we have Nix with just Mims. We got the McCaffrey. Wait, no, I was thinking getting
we don't have bringbacks here.
We don't have bringbacks on this team. So not like the best. We have 3 skinny stacks and no bringbacks, so not like hyper correlated, but still I think like the buckets are good enough. I feel like we have enough talent. I don't know. How would you grade this team?
I like the team. I do think a little bit more correlation would have went a long way. I don't do the fast drafts enough, but like immediately after seeing that, as you start talking through that, I'm like, man, the McCaffrey pick, loved the pick. But if Devontae Walker was there, it was a similar pick that we could have got to bring back from Baltimore. I made that mental note earlier when you asked about Andrews that we could add Devontae Walker late, and then I forgot to mention it at any point. But he, same buy and everything would have been a similar play. I do like McCaffrey more, but getting a little bit more correlation here would have been nice. Now, if you're going to go with a 3 QB build, to have at least one player stacked with each of the 3 is shown to be a pretty positive element, and it's a nice thing to have. We do have some do we have some week 16 stacks? Doesn't Kansas City play Houston?
I don't have week 16 memorized at all, so can't tell you that. I should. I don't have Brick's overlay on here. I'm having Brick on the channel tomorrow. I could at least see if I had that up, but don't have that.
Yeah. So Kansas City plays the Texans. We were intentionally doing that. We have
totally
Xavier Worthy as the bring back. That was totally intentional. So we got week 16 stacked up. That's what that's what the big brain people are doing. Oh, we also have. Did we take a Charger? No, we didn't take a Charger.
No, Vidal went super early. Yeah.
Broncos week 16 is the Chargers. Who do the Vikings have week 16? The Seahawks. We got Kenneth Walker. So we just were stacking week 16. Yeah.
We all read Leone's latest on how people are understacking weeks 15 and 16, and we were like, all right, we're going to stack up week 16 exactly. Now, if I'm being honest, I have not read through Leone's latest piece yet. I'm super curious. That is counterintuitive to me that you need to be stacking that much in week 15 and 16 just because the pods are so small. Is that something that you've historically paid a lot of attention? Like clearly I need to read Leone's piece and maybe start factoring in those week 15 and 16 correlations a little bit more. I understand that yes, advancement, I'm always very hyper focused on advancement, but stacking to me is just it increases the variance so much that I wouldn't think it necessary for a pod that small. But clearly Leone did some research. Have you read the research yet on the week 15
I haven't.
stuff? Okay.
I haven't, so I wouldn't be super informed on it, but I do think a big part of it is probably just that like some of the week 17 correlation stuff, like it actually influences ADPs. It pushes guys up to certain pockets, like, you know, in certain windows because they need to be correlated with certain players. And it ends up being a fairly common thing in the field. And so you start to think about ownership and combinatorial ownership and some of that stuff. That's probably a big part of it, where like week 17 has become such table stakes that I don't know. I would assume I would need to go read Leone stuff, but that is something that I've considered. You asked sort of like if I've thought about it. The part of it that I've thought about is whether week 15 and 16 is underplayed by the field. And there's ways that I could build stronger structures. You still want the week 17 element as well. So, I mean, it's because that's where like the EV swing is the biggest. If you do get there, you know, if I build a perfectly correlated week 15 and 16 team that gets into week 17 and then can't win, like, congrats on, you know, getting a little bit more money, but not really realizing the way that you could maximize your EV. So there's a lot of considerations there. I wouldn't say that I am the expert on that stuff. I should check out Leone's piece for sure.
Yeah, Leone definitely, I think, has done the most research on that, like how much of a boost you give to those weeks. I guess my instinct was the same as Karane's, which is, yes, obviously those weeks are important. You want to have teams that are going to be good in weeks 15 and 16. But for me, it's more like maybe if teams that have a good matchup, like the Raiders, because they have dome games throughout the playoffs, like, okay, that's a boost, like that kind of thing for weeks 15 and 16, more so than stacking. To me, I thought was like, okay, instinctively makes sense for week 17 because you want to increase that variance, trying to beat out a big number of teams. But clearly, Leone did some research, and I'm going to have to refresh myself, or not even refresh, but catch up on that research. All right, we had several people in this draft with us who want us to take a quick look at their teams. Jeremy, the Icon, pick 6. We'll take a look at your team. Jeremy goes Jared Goff and Deshaun Watson at quarterback. At running back, Isaiah Pacheco, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Brooks, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler, J.K. Dobbins. Wide receiver, Sun God, Nico Collins, Amari Cooper, Jamison Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Roman Wilson, Khalif Raymond, Elijah Moore, and at tight end, Sam Laporta and Cole Kmet. So he's got Goff with Sun God, JMO, and Khalif Raymond and Sam Laporta. So very, very correlated there. Within the team, no bringbacks from San Francisco. He's got Deshaun Watson with Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. So very correlated there as well. And then Miami would be the bringback. Nobody. So he's very stacked up within the teams. No bringbacks. How do you feel about this team, Gretch?
I do think about this idea of like, you know, overstacking and whether you can kind of get there or not. I tend to fall, like some of the people that are smarter than me tend to like this type of thing more than me. I tend to fall more on the side where I'm like, if I'm betting on all these other pieces in the offense, like I don't necessarily like. I think the argument for like the Khalif Raymond and Elijah Moore picks is you want to bring them along to the postseason, and then you have weekly upside each of the 3 weeks where they could spike. But you know, you're hoping that the Amon-Ra, Laporta, Amari correlated pieces, Jerry Jeudy correlated pieces are the ones that get you there and are good and also have playoff upside. But you've also now brought along Khalif Raymond and all that stuff.
Yeah.
My concern on it is I think it probably impacts your advance rate to have this much into these two offenses, unless you're just totally right on these two offenses. I'm not entirely sure if that's true, but I mean, when I'm already putting this much into the Detroit passing game and into the Cleveland passing game, I like those last round pieces to have like more uncorrelated upside, where like, you know, Khalif Raymond has like anti-correlated upside. He needs like Amon-Ra to get hurt to have like real like ceiling. I want something else into my build at the end there that's like a different offense, like we did with Luke McCaffrey, where it's like, what if Luke McCaffrey is just a revelation this year? That would be, I mean, that happens with late round rookies. He could be Amon-Ra St. Brown as a dude who was a slot receiver as a rookie and was a revelation and was kind of a late round pick in redraft that year, was a late round pick in redraft that year. Very similar comp, frankly. Amon-Ra was a 4th round pick, Luke McCaffrey a late 3rd. I'm not saying Luke McCaffrey's going to be Amon-Ra, but those types of things do happen. The ceiling outcomes do, you know, that's why we take rookies. There's these wide range of outcomes type things. I think I prefer, for me, I don't think that I'm certain it's right, but I prefer to not be this heavily stacked into offenses where I want other pieces of other offenses, because there's not going to just be 2 good NFL teams this year, right? I want like access to like who could be the revelation in a different offense. This bet is like you really need Detroit and Cleveland to kind of be it. Like they're the two teams this year. And that's not a crazy bet. They could be the two really exciting breakout teams. But I think at the very end, when I'm already hyper stacked in the earlier rounds, I don't think I would go this overstacked with both of them. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, so I'm very into stacking a lot in general. Like I don't love skinny stacks, so I really like a double stack or a triple stack. But even for me, I would say this goes a step too far. And I think you named it with Khalif Raymond, Elijah Moore. I would have done other picks there just because he already invested so much. Looking at Detroit specifically, invested so much with Amon-Ra St. Brown at pick 6, JMO at pick 78, and Sam Laporta at pick 30. It's there. I think you can leave off the Khalif Raymond. I'd be happy to take those three. Like having a triple stack with a pocket passing quarterback is great in my opinion. But I'm with you that here it goes one step too far. Where I'd rather take upside bets from other offenses with those late round picks rather than taking the guys who correlate.
And I think you said that really well. The triple stack with a pocket passer. And then I guess my concern for Cleveland is like part of Watson's ceiling case is that he probably still has some mobility. So that I'm more like a double stack with a mobile quarterback guy where I don't necessarily want to throw the third piece on, but especially to do both in the same. So you have a triple stack with a mobile guy and a quadruple stack with a pocket passer on the same build. It's like you're putting a lot into those two offenses, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is just it. It goes like right over the edge of where I'm aiming to go. Even as somebody who I tend to like, I say like, oh yeah, I'm good with more than single stacking. Some people will be like, I just want a single stack, like because there's negative correlation, whatever. I'm definitely into double stacking and triple stacking with the pocket passers, but yeah, this is just a bridge too far for me. All right, next up we had another Jack Mitchell in our draft with us. Jack goes with the 3-hole. He has Jaden Daniels and Tua at quarterback. At running back, he has Devin Achane, Rashad White, Brian Robinson, Tyler Algier, Antonio Gibson, Tyrone Tracy. At wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, Jahan Dotson, Quentin Johnston, Demarcus Robinson, Rondell Moore, Kyle Pitts, and David Njoku at tight end. So he has Jaden Daniels with Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and then he has Tua with Devin Achane, Tyreek Hill. So he does he stacks up with the running backs on both of these teams, fairly stacked up, I would say. And then Washington playing Atlanta in week 17. He also has Tyler Algier and Rondell Moore and Kyle Pitts bringbacks on that one. And then he has Tua going up against
David Njoku.
Cleveland. Yeah, he's David Njoku. So he is doing a lot of game stacking here. I don't know. What do you think of this team, Gretch?
I mean, similar for me. I think this is sort of pushing it, but I'm not like this one. You're doing more of the overstacking with some of the bringbacks, and it's like, okay, well, you've made a separate bet on Atlanta's offense, and typically when you do a big bet like that with a pocket passing offense, the pocket passer is sort of the least important element of it. Like you don't need Kirk Cousins to be right there, and then you do have this correlated element where because you could just be right on pass volume and all that, and Cousins is as a pocket passer isn't going to be the one who really elevates. Like Pitts and was it Rondell Moore? I mean, those guys could elevate and be really interesting if the Falcons' pass volume is really high and stuff like that. Cousins would be a small win, but he wouldn't be a smash necessarily in that case. And then you do have all this correlated bring back stuff. So, I mean, I get it there. The one thing I noticed about this team as you're going through it is like, this drafter doesn't seem to care about whether players are good. Like Jahan Dotson, Quentin Johnston. I talked about the Rashad White stuff. I do think like projecting role and not thinking about talent has gone a little bit far. So my honest feedback on this would be like, I do think we have to consider whether players can be efficient. The breakout stars are typically the ones that can do really efficient and good things. I don't see a lot of scenarios where like, I think Quentin Johnson can bounce back and be okay. And like, even if Jahan Dotson's able to bounce back, I think he could be okay. I think Rashad White could have another heavy volume year. I don't think any of those guys can be league winners. Like they can be small wins, but I don't think they can be efficiency mavens and just absolutely smash ADP. I do think like Devon Achane is an example of that type of player. I think you want more of those players in a build. there's too many guys that I'm questionable about what they actually are as talents in this build for me. Jaden Daniels, another one that can smash. Tyreek Hill can smash. There's some players in this build that are really, really fun, but my honest response would be like, I would want more hyper efficient players or chances at that. More rookie. Like we took a lot of rookies. Tyrone Tracy's an option there, but you need to hit on big hits to win this thing.
I would say that you are, I would say, an elite ball knower. So some of us, even if we want to be betting on talent, like, it can be tough. Some of us just default to ADP is generally going to tend towards being efficient. So like, it can be tough to, figure out who is going to be good. So maybe he doesn't know. Like, Jahan Dotson. I'm low on Jahan Dotson. I'm low on Quentin Johnson. But not everybody who's doing these drafts. It could be that he's just like, all right, I'll take Jahan Dotson 7 picks past ADP.
Sure.
I think that's just most of us
not
don't
trying
have,
to
you're not trying to shame him. I know.
No, I take those picks occasionally. I've drafted a decent amount of Quentin Johnston, and Andy makes a great point here in the chat that we took Singletary. Like I do think those are draftable players. I'm just saying that I don't think
you don't want to load up on them.
I'll load up on them in the same build. I think you want more upside. Exactly.
All right. We had Jason slot 9 Huron River Rat. Goes with Anthony Richardson, Derek Carr at quarterback. At running back, he has Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, Marshawn Lloyd, Ray Davis. At wide receiver, Michael Pittman, George Pickens, Jordan Addison, Curtis Samuel, Rashid Shaheed, A.D. Mitchell, Jacoby Myers, Adam Thielen, and at tight end, Tyler Conklin, Jelani Woods, and Jawan Johnson. So he has Anthony Richardson with Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman and A.D. Mitchell and Jelani Woods. And then he has Derek Carr with Alvin Kamara, Rashid Shaheed, and Jawan Johnson. So very, very much correlation going on these teams in this draft with us. Indy plays New York in week 17. Doesn't have any Giants on this one that I can see immediately. And then New Orleans, I forget who they play. They play Las Vegas.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Vegas with Jacoby Myers bring back. So he's got very, very overstacked. I'm guessing the analysis is going to be similar here with Anthony Richardson. I feel like with Jonathan Taylor and Pittman and A.D. Mitchell and Jelani Woods, does that feel a little bit much?
It feels like a little much to me, but
for a rushing quarterback.
I mean, I like missing on this side more than the other side. Like your viewers are paying attention, and that's good. Like, you guys aren't missing the stack opportunities in those things. I do dig that. This does feel like a little bit overstacked to me too, especially with Richardson's ceiling being more on the rushing side. Wasn't a great passing prospect. Didn't really show anything in his really small sample that changed that. The big thing he showed was rushing ceiling, and so. I mean, I don't mind stacking them with like Jonathan Taylor and being like, well, they're both going to run for a ton. Like that's the RG3 Alfred Morris thing. On my stream earlier, people were talking about that maybe happening in Washington. I don't see that in Washington so much, but I could see that in Indy where Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson are running for a ton of yards. But at that point, there's not a lot of passing yards in the offense then. And you probably only want like one receiving option. Maybe it's Pittman, maybe it's Mitchell, maybe it's Woods. But to have all three of those and Taylor, like the way that this offense succeeds and the way Richardson succeeds is to take. So the thing about mobile quarterbacks is when they run a lot, they take away skill position production, right? There's no handoff. There's no target. And so it's actually just limiting what's actually there for everyone else. And so the way that Richardson succeeds at that ADP is to steal from his teammates. Ultimately, he's running for a decent amount of the production. He's not going to be a 4,500 yard passer. He's going to be running enough to steal from his teammates. I could see it with Taylor. I could see it with like some skinnier stacks. It's hard for me to see the shape of the offense that succeeds in a way that Richardson crushes that ADP, Taylor crushes that ADP, because if they both do that, that's a really run-oriented offense.
Yeah.
And then also 3 receiving weapons are solid. I don't mind the late, like, Jelani Woods thing, right? Like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're trying to bring him along, etc. But I probably wouldn't do Richardson with Taylor and Pittman. A.D. Mitchell, maybe, because he's more of a explosive downfield, like big play, like splash play. You don't need a ton of pass volume. I have a hard time seeing the shape of the offense where all 5 of those guys could work together in a rushing QB
Yeah.
offense.
I feel like it's just like one too far. Like if you just like skip one of AD or Jelani Woods, I think I would prefer it a little bit, or Pittman, whatever. Yeah, just like one fewer option to me. I kind of like the New Orleans stack personally. I think Derek Carr with Alvin Kamara, obviously making the bet on Kamara being the guy there, and then just one receiver, one tight end. I like that a
Yeah, that's
little bit
fine.
more, like at the different
Yeah.
positions. That so I
Especially
like that.
if you're going to overstack at the later round dudes, like Shaheed is a little bit of a later receiver, not super cheap or anything, but and Juwan Johnson later. But like Kamara can catch a ton of balls. Shaheed's another guy like Mitchell, where he's a high A dot, big play, like spike week type of player, but then can have no catches the next week, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
like his production is going to come in bunches, and that works in like an overstacked situation where like Juwan
Yeah.
Johnson might be the guy the next week or what have you.
Yeah.
I like that one. And I think the Indy one for me, probably I would take Pittman out of it, weirdly enough, because I do think
Interesting.
Pittman actually gets the most volume here. They do a lot of RPO passing, which tends to go. I wrote a piece last year about how in RPOs, the wide receiver one can earn a lot more volume because it's a run pass option. Either it's a handoff, it's a run, or they throw. And when they pull the ball and throw, it has to go to the first read because the offensive linemen are run blocking. They're blocking downhill, and you get ineligible downfield if the quarterback doesn't get the ball out. So he can't get through a progression, has to go to the first read. We saw that a lot last year. Indy was second in the NFL in RPO pass attempts, and that helped Pittman's target share. So he is probably the best answer, but just because of price, I was thinking in my head, maybe he's the one from the Indy one that I would take out, but he's probably the best answer to stack with Richardson because you are saying Richardson's going to throw a decent amount, and he probably consolidates those RPO targets.
Yeah. So
I don't know. It's tricky. All these questions are tricky. Like there's multiple ways it could play out. But what I was saying with the Colts thing is like when you get with the mobile quarterback and you get 5 guys, I just don't know that I can tell myself that story. The Saints drop back passer, only 4 guys. I can tell myself that story.
Yep. I'm with you. I think it is strong analysis. All right, one more team to look at, and we're going to jump into another draft. Ryan asking us to look at RK Seal in the 7 hole. Ryan has Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, and Daniel Jones at quarterback. At running back, he has Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Zamir White, Zeke Elliott, Roshan Johnson at wide receiver, AJ Brown, Chris Olave, Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, Josh Palmer, Jalen Hyatt, and at tight end, Luke Musgrave, Hunter Henry, and Noah Fant. So this is a 3-5-7-3 build. He has Jalen Hurts with AJ Brown and just AJ Brown, and then he has bring back of Zeke Elliott from Dallas for week 17. He's got Justin Herbert with Ladd McConkey and Josh Palmer. He has the bring back of Hunter Henry from New England. Wait, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yep.
New England. I have them like memorized, but then I question myself still. We're not quite in the summer where I'm like confident in all of them yet. And then he has Daniel Jones also with that Hunter Henry pick. Looks pretty solid to me. I feel like I like the stacking going on here. What do you think,
Daniel
Gretch?
Jones is the Giants. You got
Hunter Henry. You're right. Yeah, Daniel Jones
Hyatt.
with Jalen Hyatt.
And then what is their bring back? That's the Colts. Which all the Colts are on the last team we looked at.
Yeah, exactly.
No Colts on this
left,
team.
sorry. Yeah.
No bring back here. Yeah, I mean this is an interesting team for sure. I kind of like it. I personally tend not to do 3 QB builds with 3 tight end builds because I feel like it can thin things out. The 5 running backs on this team are, if you're going to go a 5 running back build, they are guys that you can reasonably project for like solid roles, solid workloads throughout the year. Jacobs, James Conner, and Zamir White especially. And there's a lot of paths, obviously, for Ezekiel Elliott to get a lot of work. So I can see why he stopped at 5 running backs. But, I mean, there's also a lot of, like, fragility there. Zeke, Conner, even Jacobs is, 2 years removed from a 370-touch season. Like, he's coming up there in age. But some potential injury issues there, and you're thin, right? So you really need those touches that feel like guaranteed touches. And then the 7 receivers. The chat says the winner last year was 3-6-6-3. I mean, fair point. The receivers, do you mind scrolling down? I don't remember exactly who they are, but yeah, I mean, the receivers are solid. Like the first 4 are really nice first 4. AJ Brown, Chris Olave, Cooper Kupp, and Keenan Allen. Like that feels really good. And then you get 2 Chargers to stack with Herbert. You get high. I mean, I guess if I'm going Hurts and I'm double stacking Herbert and I'm playing the Chargers pass game to be something that the market's missing and that it's actually that has some volume, I don't know that I need the 3rd QB, but That would be maybe my only real criticism there.
Yeah. And I will say I don't put a lot of stock into what won last year. That's just one lineup happened, and it's not a knock on the team that won. I'd say the same thing with Corain's year, just like 1 year
Yeah,
sample size, the winner of 700,000. I'd put more stock into like what got you to week 17 in general is going to be, in my opinion, a better indicator of like looking at the entire field of week 17 or the playoffs, whatever. A much bigger sample size than what won one time 1 year
for
on
sure.
one slate. All right. I'm gonna jump into another Gretch. I would love to have you stick around for another draft if you
Sure,
can.
let's do it. Let's do
Hell
it.
yeah.
Yeah, this is fun. I don't get to
And
do enough fast drafts.
I know that you are capable of just streaming all day. I know that about you. So
Yeah, I've done it before.
all right, we're jumping in. If you want to jump in with us, there are a few spots left here. I think the most I've done is like 4 or 5 hours in one stream. It gets rough after a while. I don't think I'm cut out for the 24-hour marathon streams that some people do. The 3 4 hour streams that you do, I think I can do those.
Yeah,
Um,
I start to hit a wall after like 3 hours. I need to have a certain level of energy to get even to like 4 or 5, but
I don't
that's
know how you do it as a solo stream. Like I could not. Yeah, I take it back. I couldn't do what you do, where you're just like you're making 6 picks over the course of 4 hours. Like I can do it if I'm doing a fast draft and like I have things fed to me to talk about. You're good at just like monologues. Like you just go and go without
good is
like
relative, man. It's a blessing and a curse. Like
I mean
Nathan's
I
comment in
enjoy
the
it.
chat. He's like, if this was a Gretch stream, we'd still be waiting for him to make his first slow draft pick. Like that's
Right,
the
right,
reality. Like it's a blessing and a curse. I can go long, but also like sometimes I want to do a short show and it still turns into a 3 hour show.
right.
So that's not great.
I enjoyed your long discussion of the sidekick, the new leg up draft. They don't call it draft caddy, but the draft helper from leg up. I thought that was a really good long discussion of that because it's a really unique thing that people are talking about right now. I personally, it seems like it should be legal to me. I definitely have concerns about it, but I really enjoyed the way you talked about the sidekick. All right,
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I honestly like hadn't given that exact conversation a ton of thought and
right.
wasn't
Do you like
prepared
Hill
really
here?
to discuss it a ton, but the chat was yeah, I'm Tyreek here. The chat was discussing that and was asking questions about it. Yeah, you can find that conversation on my stream. I definitely don't want to get back into it because I found myself
Right.
really diving into it. That's
Yeah.
sort of my MO, as you
Right.
know. It's kind of just stream of consciousness. It's the first time I'm thinking through this, and I'm just going to tell you everything that's flowing through my mind right now.
Yeah.
Luckily,
That
some people seem to enjoy it, so I appreciate
it
it.
was a good cover. I mean, that was it was ended up what 4.5 hour long stream. It was pretty early on. So yeah, if you want, it was within the past week. I forget which stream it was exactly, but
Mhm.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good conversation. Some really interesting points that you made there. Yeah, I enjoyed the stream of consciousness streams. I couldn't do it myself. Like I just, man, I don't think on my toes enough to do a solo stream for that long without like something that is leading the conversation for me. That's it's in my opinion an impressive trait, but definitely tough. Gretch is the wait. I'm gonna try
Appreciate it.
the sidekick.
Yeah. Um, Chad's mentioning AJ goes at 5 in this draft,
Oh
ahead of
damn.
Jamar Chase. That's a
I
bold
wonder.
swing.
I wonder if he's trying something there, like maybe
Yeah, it'll be interesting to track that. Maybe
Saquon,
Devonta Smith because
Devonta.
they're not pairing up as much because Devonta
Yeah,
goes before the third, so maybe it's going to be AJ Brown. But he's got to take Devonta in the second and Hurts in the third. He's going to do
yeah.
a 3 straight Eagles.
Yeah, he's not going to do the something that people did in like pre-draft stuff, or maybe even early in this. You could do all four if you wanted to: AJ Brown, Saquon, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts. Those days I think are long gone. Getting all four of those Eagles guys on the same team probably was never a good idea. I think I have 1 or 2 shares of that, starting with the 4 Eagles. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he's trying something.
Harrison and Nico at the turn. That's interesting.
I've seen a lot of people just trying to get a little bit different at the turn. I assume that's what Jack is doing with that
Yeah.
pairing.
I don't mind. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to pull someone up, Nico's one of the names that I would be comfortable pulling up.
Yeah, that was another interesting stream of consciousness discussion today on Gretch's stream, was the talking about combinatorial ownership and like whether you should be trying to get different. And I thought that your ultimate conclusion is my ultimate conclusion is that like not something I'm going to worry about if I'm only doing 40 drafts. If I'm doing, and I plan on doing hundreds of drafts, so at that point, like I am concerned about combinatorial ownership. But I thought it was a point well made that like you don't want to make the worst pick just to have differentiation if you're not
Right.
doing a ton of different drafts.
There's variance with all this stuff. There's variance with, if you get an opportunity to draft a player at a good price and you're not going to take him because you already have him stacked up with another player, I think that's a mistake. Like you draft the team that's in front of you for that one draft, and then yeah, you can think through that stuff as well. I mean, I think there's multiple ways to think about that. So hey, Saquon's been finally falling.
Right.
I'm not very into Saquon, but it's interesting to see him finally sliding. There's people who've been wanting him to fall forever.
Yeah.
My pick here, honestly, would be Neighbors, but I mean, I'm open to a lot of paths. Whatever you want to do.
I like Neighbors quite a bit, so I am into that.
When you're this close to the turn, it's like, I'd love to get Neighbors at the 303, but I think the rest of it is pretty flat. And structurally, I really want to get in on the receiver. So, like, why not just take the receiver that I like? So, Achan's the guy that would have also been the pick for me, but I would have probably just taken him in the third if we got that opportunity. And if not, I don't love getting a running back early structurally. So, I'd rather just take Neighbors and then get a discount on Achan than the other way around, or try to do it the other way around.
Yeah.
Because structurally, I'd rather just do 3 receivers if I can.
If you were dead set on HN and Neighbors being the 2 picks there, then you would take HN would have been the pick at 2 because Neighbors more likely to fall back to you. But it sounds like you were not dead set on like you need to get that combo. HN would be like, yeah, if he comes back, great, we'll pair him with Hill, but not like a huge priority.
I don't think I have to pair those guys. I've done a couple with Hill and Achan. I thought through it and I'm like, yeah, it's a hyper concentrated offense, but it's a lot of draft capital to tie up into one offense. I tend to think in the early rounds, you want to get really good players from different offenses, right? And we're up, and the pick for me would be Devonta Smith. That guy didn't take Devonta in the second round.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I wonder what he's doing with that. What did he do in the second? He took a lot.
Jalen Waddle.
He took Waddle. He's just trying to get a different build with AJ Brown, I guess.
But like you could take AJ Brown at like when you have the 9 hole and take Waddle. I don't know. It's
right.
It's interesting.
And what's the pick at 5 here in the third round here? Sorry for the yawn. I did the 3 hours just a little bit ago.
No worries.
We're going on like my 5th hour of streaming today.
I mean, I don't hate it. Like AJ Brown, Jalen Waddle seem like perfectly fine picks there. If maybe it's just a player take, maybe he just likes AJ Brown that much better. Now goes Cooper Kupp. I feel like this is not even he's not unique through 3 rounds.
No, this is a build you could make from the later round. Like to your point, you could just take Waddle a little higher and you can get Kupp to fold to the late third. I hesitate to see paths for AJ Brown in a, like, again, we're just talking about the mobile quarterbacks and what they do for the volume of the skill players. That's the thing. I think AJ Brown is one of the elite wide receivers in the NFL. I'm a huge fan of him. If you go to my Twitter profile, he's been my backdrop for like 5 years. And I updated it for a while. It was, one of his Tennessee pictures, the one with the chains, I think it was. Yeah. I updated it to the one from the Eagles a couple years ago where he scored the TD and he was pointing at the Steelers defenders, but it's always been AJ Brown. I'm a big AJ Brown guy, but I hesitate to see the scenario wherein a Jalen Hurts offense, particularly, and on a team that is willing to run when ahead. And they showed us that 2 years ago when they won a lot of games. They ran the ball a bunch. The big argument last year was, well, they're going to trail more. They have a tougher schedule. They're going to be in closer games. They're going to have to throw more. And they did throw more, but then there's an efficiency element there. We're like, yeah, they just weren't like, you got to be more efficient with all that as well. But in a Jalen Hurts offense, I struggle to see where his statistical ceiling can match what Jamar Chase's statistical ceiling could be in a Bengals offense, right? Like, I think for Brown to be right, you have to get the Eagles to really hit a ceiling, and you need like some of the other players like Chase to have a lower than 50th percentile outcome. Because Burrow and Chase and the Bengals and what their offense could be, they didn't really invest in the running backs. It could be a lot of passing. Chase can have the wide receiver 1 season statistically, I think, fairly easily, if you really think through how good he is. I think Brown's good enough to do that, just not in the iteration of the offense that he's in. It's almost like you would need Jalen Hurts to get hurt to make that. Anyway, I think it's a tier gap. And so that to me is an example of, I think it's a mistake to pull up that player to 5, even though I love the talent of AJ Brown.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same boat, unless like I did do it. I remember specifically taking AJ Brown at like the 3-hole like maybe once last year, but it was because I was doing something specifically of like getting the unique AJ Brown with Jalen Hurts. Like there was some unique, I forget what the combination was exactly. Maybe it was getting all three of them. Like you had to take AJ Brown at 3 to be able to get Devonta Smith and Jalen
Right.
Hurts all on the same team. I think that's what it was. I did that once or twice last year, but without any kind of like trying to do something different. I don't totally understand it. Somebody in the chat
And
said he thinks that we took his Devonta Smith, which might be true. That might be he was
it
counting
might
on
be
Devonta Smith
true.
at 29, but you can't count on that anyway. So
Right. And you're not going to get Hurts to come back to you. Probably he didn't also make it back. So,
right.
I mean, if you're trying to build that particular team, you're trying to get Hurts in the 4th. I think you had to do Smith in the 2nd and Hurts in the 3rd if you really wanted to build that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Which you could also just do from the late draft slot.
All right. So by ADP, it's George Pickens here.
I'm not super into Pickens. We already lose? Yeah, I don't draft Pickens at all. So if you're not into him, let's not take him. It could be ETN for me. What's at tight end? Is it Andrews? And is there another? We lost McBride? I mean, I think I would just take a tight end at this point. If you like Andrews, let's just grab Andrews and we'll figure out the wrap when it comes back around.
Yeah, there's no Kelsey, there's no McBride.
And neither of these guys behind us had a tight end. It's not likely that they both would have taken one, but in the scenario where they both do, you're put in that spot where you're like, I'm either taking Pitts at 503 or I'm not getting tight end until the late 6. So I tend to just be like, all right, well, if I think it's relatively flat and there's not a guy that I think fell to me in the 4th, I'll just take the tight end here because I don't want to have that question in the 5th.
Yeah, that's I'm realizing I was also thinking, we'll take Andrews with Lamar Jackson potentially coming back. He already went at the end of the 3rd round, so no Andrews here, unfortunately.
Andrews
but I still think I prefer Andrews over Kincaid anyway. But
so ETN still sitting there is kind of fascinating to me.
He is falling past ADP.
If you want to take him there, we could. I mean, Hollywood Brown, Jaden Reed would both be fine wide receiver picks to get a 4th, but we could push that receiver pick to the late 6.
Sure. Yeah, let's try. I don't have a ton of ETN. He seems like a solid enough pick, so I'm good with that.
I don't think there's any reason Travis Etienne should be going at 503. Like that's really pretty crazy. I know that he lost some work late last year, but midseason last year, I mean, a lot of people in their like rest of season rankings had him as like the RB2. He was like absolutely smashing. I do know they want to cut his workload back a little bit. I think you have to recognize that starts from a place where he was, I think, like 3rd or 4th in the NFL in average snap share at the running back position. He played a ton last year, and Tank Bigsby wasn't very good, and that's the guy that they want to use to cut in. And I've been drafting some Bigsby because he's really cheap, and I get that he could have some standalone value in the 18th round. It could be a viable play. But I mean, I think keeping ETN fresh might actually be helpful, right? I mean, like, regardless, this is a guy who had a really good prospect profile, was a 1st-round pick. He misses his whole rookie year, which is a bummer, but since coming back has been nothing but like productive. There's an argument that he should be viewed. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. He had 12 TDs last year. He caught 58 passes. The big issue after 2022 was he didn't catch enough passes. Then he goes and almost doubles it. I mean, he had 35 catches in 2022. He goes all the way up to 58 in his 2nd season as a player, 3rd season on the roster. It's bizarre to me. I think, there's a case to be made that he should be going up with like, he's a young, like hit, a 1st-round running back that was a hit. He should be going up with, I'm not going to say like with Breece Hall and those guys, but like we're talking about a young running back that's a stud and a good offense.
Maybe with Kyron.
Maybe with Kyron or something. There's arguments that he should be going in those ranges. We just got like, I get why people are a little worried about him, particularly because the workload stuff and because he already lost the season to a foot injury. I can get it. But like, if he's going to have a little bit of lower ADP, he shouldn't then also fall 10 picks behind that and really any room. Like you get him at 503. That's just weird. He's a 3rd-round running back. I mean, probably a late 2nd-round running back, like he should go ahead of Saquon.
Yeah. And you can see
my opinion,
how it happens here. The 2 teams next to us start with 4 receivers. We started with 3, couple of teams on the end. So definitely kind of a wide receiver avalanche piss boy kind of room, which helps you get a falling Travis Etienne there.
Sure. Yeah. And it's a nice pick. And I mean, the funny thing is, like I'm sitting there saying all that, you can make a good case that a lot of running backs are good values this year. And what
I
ends up
know that's
happening
the
is if
thing.
you take all those values, then you wind up with a team that can't win because you don't have enough receiver firepower.
Yeah,
I'm really hoping that we get enough receivers to come back to us at the 6-7 turn. Like we're kind of sweating that. But this is part of the reason that I love, and I talked about the optimal thing being the 3 receiver start. I really enjoy getting high-end receivers early because I think that's how you build flexibility and the ability to take a falling value on a Travis Etienne. If we took Etienne in the second, I would have had a harder time taking Etienne there. I probably would have wanted to take Jaden Reed or Hollywood Brown. It's easier then to take that value out of structure a little bit when
yeah,
you've started with the 3 receivers. It gives you the flexibility.
yeah. Definitely in this build. I'm glad we took 3 to start on this team. Helps quite a bit. How strongly do you subscribe to the 4 receivers through 7 rounds? Like always, is that something you like really target for, or is that kind of a loose guideline that you don't always end up doing?
um, it's not specifically because of that. I think that's Hayden Wink's research. It's not necessarily specifically because of that, but that's kind of always been my structure. I'm kind of a
Yeah,
0 RB anyway.
right.
I probably wind up with 5 receivers through 7 more than even 4, right? Like, and I almost never have 3 through 7. Like, it's just structurally the way I think it should go. Did JSN already go?
No, he's
Oh,
here.
I think he's the pick here. He went earlier than this in the last draft. He's been rising a little. I saw both Deontay Johnson and Rashee Rice go in that round. That's the 3 receivers I was just talking about
Oh
in our
man,
last draft that I was
yeah.
saying all kind of needed to come up into the 6th round. I'm bummed to see that both Deontay and Rice went, but we at least got JSN to fall back to us. So
It's funny. I feel like all the players that I was drafting early, and I consume a lot of content, so I'm watching ship chasing. Probably a lot of my views are skewed somewhat by you and Pat and a lot of those guys. But I have mixed feelings about like, oh, Christian Kirk. I loved when I could get him always at like the in the 5th round. Like that was so nice. Now all the picks that I loved early on seem to be rising so much, and it's like I guess that's a good thing that we got CLV on those guys, but at the same time, it's like it feels like it's getting tougher getting the players
it
you like.
does. It does. I agree with that. It does feel like it's getting a little tougher. In this room, particularly, I used to love getting 2 of that trio at the 6-7. I still think at the picks receiver here, I'm okay with a lad pick here or a Christian Watson, whichever of those guys you like. I think this
I
is a
like
good
both.
price for lad. I mean,
I
he's
do
been
too.
going higher. Let's take him.
Yeah,
I mean, he's been getting buzz. There was a blurb the other day that was like Justin Herbert can't stop targeting him or something like that. I think it
yeah,
was the
right.
football guys email that they send out that talked about it. Um, he's a rookie with upside at a certain point. Like I'm willing to make that bet. I didn't love taking him when I had to do it ahead of like a Deontay Johnson or a Rashee Rice. When you get to
Right.
this price and those guys have gone off and DeAndre Hopkins has gone off, the opportunity cost is different. At this point, I'm very willing to bake him into my build as an upside swing in the 7th round.
Yeah, no, I this range of receivers, like it doesn't feel as sure thing, but I love a lot of these clicks. Like this whole range of 6th, 7th round receivers feels really good to me. And then there's to me, like JMO is the start of a new tier that I kind of hate. I guess he's kind of in a tier by himself, but like I don't like taking JMO ahead of Cortland Sutton, Tyler Lockett, like Josh Palmer. That next tier of receivers feels like he should be in that tier, and for whatever reason, he's been steamed up ahead of those guys, like right after the Deontay Johnson, Lad McConkey, JSN. Um, so yeah, I like to get receiver here and then kind of let it fall, and then we get into another tier that I sort of like later on. Do you feel the same way about JMO, or are you more into JMO than I am?
No, I think he's a tough click at this price for sure. Yeah, I
Like,
mean, it's not. It's like there's not a lot there. You're really banking on it. I would like so the thing about the rookies in this range, even though they have some questionable profiles, is they're the wide range thing where they could just hit right away. And sometimes, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what good examples are, but they're like we mentioned Amon Ra in the last draft. Like there are guys that are not really thought to be. I mean, even Justin Jefferson was going in this range, and then he had the awesome rookie season. Garrett Wilson was going later than this as a rookie. Now he was a little bit higher touted as a prospect. You can
yeah,
point to the age adjusted production and stuff like that, and you can with Jefferson as well. But there's guys that people had issues with rookies, and then still hit, and that were even less touted than this. And so anyway, the point is with rookies, there's a lot of uncertainty. Prospect evaluation is not a solved thing. We don't know for sure like how good these guys are going to be. With Jameson Williams, it's like this guy's done a lot at the NFL level that has concerned us. I'm still willing to be like, this is a really good like profile, and this is a fun team. And I thought he bounced back last year. There were some cool plays. One of my like most like bullish things on him is that he had some really good like run blocking plays down the stretch and into the playoffs, like some like where he extended the play all the way down the field and was doing some good run blocking.
Yeah,
and like they were getting highlighted on the broadcast and stuff. And it was like
he was celebrating after, like, oh, that was such an awesome run. Like he was like, he bought into
the effort
system.
was there, and you love to see that. That's something that you needed to see from him. But man, like we're buying in. Like he's been having some good years, and he's not been having good years.
Right.
So I mean, around this range, I think the running backs are a nice pick. Zach Moss and Raheem Mostert are both fine. I mean, we did Bowers last draft, but like I think Bowers is totally viable again.
To me, it's between these two mostly. Zach Moss has the same bye week as ETN.
Okay.
So minor. I'm gonna break the tie away from that. We do have Hill, so Mostert correlates a little bit. Who do you prefer between these two?
Let's do Bowers. I know we just did it, but I do really like to get two tight ends like by the time Bowers is gone.
I usually do too.
Then if not right behind that, basically, like if I try to get Goddard or Schultz or something. I don't like to push it too much. I do think there's some intriguing late round guys if you do get into that spot. Luke Musgrave, Noah Fant are guys that I like to play. Cole Kmet. I mean, I know people talked about Cole Kmet's got a lot of stuff working against him with good receivers and Gerald Everett in town and all of that. But if anybody gets banged up or anything, I think Kmet had a good year last year and he could step into more work. I think he's talented. But yeah, it's tricky. Man, both Moss and Mostert go.
That's tough.
But yeah, I think it's tricky for him. What do we have at running back? Oh, there's some other good options here.
So this is the running backs.
I don't take a lot of Pollard. I think Benson's like a fine upside swing when you already have ETN as an anchor, and then you can come back with volume, or Javonte, right? Like I've already obviously told you that I love Javonte.
Let's go Javonte. Let's get a share of Javonte.
Let's do it.
Benson has been, I think, falling a little bit. I've bought into the FUD a little bit with Benson. He's a guy that I was super into for a while. And then I've slowed down, put on the brakes a little bit more recently, just because of the chatter that all makes it sound like, he's almost certainly just a contingency pick. Like it feels like it's okay. We have James Conner. He's our guy. He's going to be our starting running back. All the hype from Kyler Murray is James Conner. So I've like stepped on the brakes a little bit of from the standpoint of like, okay, I had been treating it as though Benson was going to get 40% of the workload right away. And I feel like it's more contingent upside than it is standalone value. I don't know. How do you see things in the Arizona backfield? Am I reading this wrong? Like, do you think he does? Is he going to have a 40% of the workload right away? How do you see it playing out in Arizona?
No, I think he's a pretty purely contingent play, but I do think there is some ceiling. I don't think people understand how good James Conner was last year. He had a career rushing yards, 5.0 yards per carry. He was really good in all the advanced metrics. It was his first 1,000-yard rushing season. Kyler Murray had a quote the other day where he was like talking about their new, not the new offense, but the offense and the receivers and who they have and what they're going to be able to do and all this stuff. And I think the question started with Marvin Harrison. He's talking about Harrison and McBride and Dortch and all these guys. And then he was like, and we got a great running back in James Conner. And it was just like very offhand. Like we have one running back. He's our running back. Like that's our dude. And I think that's the way the team is thinking as well. Like they go get Benson knowing that Conner is 29 and he's not going to be around forever, but Conner's the kind of guy that's like everywhere he's been, he's a definition of a workhorse, man. Like teams, like they look at that and they're like, this is our guy's our tone setter, right? They talk about this type of running back in those types of terms, and coaches love him and they're going to want to play him, I think, for the most part. Now he's one of the better bets to get hurt. Like one of the things I've said about Conner, because I've been taking some of them, is like, what if he doesn't get hurt?
Right.
But in terms of like games played, James Conner's never played more than 15 games in a season. He's only played more than 14 games once. And that was his rookie year 2021, he played 15 games. His rookie year, he played 14. the other 5 seasons of his career, 13 or fewer. He usually misses like 3 or 4 games. Like it's been a thing in his career. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen. I don't try to predict injuries or anything like that, but it wouldn't be all that surprising if Benson got some starts this year. There's not a lot of other options there. I think Benson would probably play quite a bit, and you get some spot starts, you get some potential for some spike weeks. I don't think when I take Benson that I'm planning on standalone value. I'm thinking a couple 20-point weeks, really, like a couple spike weeks. And then maybe he earns some standalone value from that once Connor's back or whatever. And then there's scenarios where Connor has a serious injury, which just unfortunately does happen if he's a 29-year-old back. And then maybe Benson just takes over and has a really good year the rest of the way from that point of that injury. But yeah, I mean, going into the year, my expectation is that James Conner is going to be the lead back, like pretty clearly.
Me too. So I guess I like Benson better as a third running back than a second running back in general. Like just from a profile, like I don't think he's going to be doing much early in the year. So I like to start with a couple guys that I think are going to have early season success or have roles in the season to get you through. And then
for sure,
I love Benson as like a late season hammer kind of a pick.
But see, this is the thing, and I was just going to say, and I mean, for me, it would be Singletary again. I don't know, or we could go down to Chase Brown, who I was talking about last time. But
Singletary for
we have a stack option. We
do. Is Tua here? We do have Tua.
Okay, he's an option at this turn. We could try to go Tua and Chase Brown, but we can go Singletary again too. I'm fine either way.
Chase Brown is again going Tua first. Because we don't really care about which of the running backs makes it back. I suppose we probably neither of these guys has Waddle, so probably should have gone the other route. But the one concern from me with Chase Brown being a bye week bro is the bye weeks. But if we're going to end up taking, it's probably a 6 or 7 running back build anyway, so not a huge issue.
So one of the things I was going to say with the Benson thing is that I think you can take him as the RB2, just knowing that like you've built that type of profile into your build.
And then take
because I don't take a lot of early running backs regardless. So if I'm not going to take him as the RB2, I'm probably not going to get a lot of Benson. But I think about it in terms of like I want my running back room to have a certain type of texture at the end. Yeah. If I have to take the upside swing earlier because that's his price, then I'll take a Singletary behind it, right? Yeah. And then it still gets that similar texture. Or a Brian Robinson behind it, or whoever it 100%. Is, I think has a little bit more stable volume. Charbonnet is another way to play that. That's not as like obvious, but I think is like, that guy's going to have standalone value. And Benson's my not standalone value, but contingent upside guy.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. Yeah, I in these builds, then I'm like, okay, I'm just going to treat Devin Singletary as though he's the RB2 and Benson's the RB3, even though I drafted them differently. Yeah,
even though you drafted them differently.
Point well taken.
But in this case, we did take Williams, and so at that point, I'm thinking more in terms of like pure upside. I don't know if Singletary has as much, and that's why I started to get excited about Brown. I hear you on the bye weeks. I mean, that's a good point.
But I think if we are taking 6-7, we can just factor that in later.
I think Brown's a nice fit when you already have ETN and Williams, because I think he could be a 0, frankly, but he's a big swing. And the Bengals backfield is one that is underpriced collectively, I think.
A funny thing for me listening to you is I know how into Javonte Williams is. To me, Javonte Williams and Brian Robinson, I've kind of treated them like they're the exact same, like, week 14 bye, like not the most exciting running back for me, but I feel like the floor is pretty high. So like in my mind, they're like the same archetype of player. Clearly you see them pretty differently. And it sounds like that's largely because of the pass catching role that you're anticipating for Javonte Williams. You don't really think that Brian Robinson is going to have much of a pass catching role. And you kind of went over it on your stream this morning, I suppose. He had some games last year where he like started being a little bit more of a pass catcher. They used him a couple games. So I was like, I've been kind of buying into, well, maybe it's there. But to your point from the stream, they signed Austin Eckler. Yeah, you can go into it.
The Austin Eckler element is a big part of it. And their quotes about Brian Robinson in the past game, they talked about like, we have Austin here to help guide him through that. And I talked about this in my stream a little bit. It's like, well, it sounds like they're talking about Austin Eckler, like the passer down back, and they're glad that Brian Robinson gets hurt. But they brought in one of the most clear passing down backs of his generation, right? Eckler's best seasons were when he also got the rushing work, but he was always the passing back, right? He's always been that dude since the Melvin Gordon days. But the second part of it, when I was talking about my high value touch research, the big other part of it is the element of rushing QBs versus mobile quarterbacks, where mobile quarterbacks or immobile quarterbacks versus, rushing QBs, mobile versus immobile. The statues will get through their progressions and then dump off. They'll get down to the running back. The mobile quarterbacks will get through a couple progressions and then take off and run. Yeah. And their scrambling is the dump offs. So they're for the immobile quarterback. So one of the best quarterbacks for running back targets in his whole generation was Phillip Rivers. Guy had no mobility whatsoever, famously played a playoff game without an ACL in his knee because he didn't move in the pocket. He would get through his progressions downfield, then throw to his running back. Tom Brady was great for running back targets. Drew Brees was great for running back targets. These are guys that don't move in the pocket. This generation of mobile quarterbacks that we have, they don't throw to the running backs as much. So it's not just Eckler. It's also that in Washington, I don't expect there to be very many running back targets. In Denver, I think that they led the league last year, and I think that number could even go up, right? Like I'm talking about Bo Nix being that much of a better scheme fit, that he's mobile, but he likes to take the conservative underneath passing. It's a big part of Peyton's offense. I'm expecting so many running back targets there that's really the difference for me. It's more team element based. It's more quarterback based and scheme based. And I don't think Jayden Daniels is going to be thrown to the running backs a ton. And then it's split, right? And then when he does, Eckler is going to get some of those, because I'm not taking Eckler a lot either. I think it's tough for the Washington running backs, because I think Daniels is going to be pretty mobile and run and steal production from his backs the way that we were talking about mobile QBs do. Brian Robinson's an okay pick. Like, I take some of him. I had him on a team right after I got done talking about not liking him on the stream. The next team I went to do a slow draft pick, he was on that team, and I was like, oh yeah. I mean, I do take Brian Robinson, but I'm not super into him.
Okay. We are coming up on our pick. I have thoughts. We'll wait until our pick. Justin Herbert to me feels like a pretty solid pick. We have Ladd. Otherwise, we do have Marshawn Lloyd here also. Ty Chandler, Jalen Wright.
I love those running backs, but we can get one of them coming back if Herbert's the ADP value here. He's a faller, 10 picks past ADP. We have
the stack. Yeah, makes sense.
This is great. Herbert too Herbert's a nice price where people are really confident it's going to be a very run heavy offense. It might be, but that's a great call. I would have taken Marshawn Lloyd there without thinking, and then I would have regretted it later. I like getting the two QBs in this, round 9 to 12 QB window. There's been evidence that's shown that that's a really strong way to build with two QBs before QB gets really thin and you start to get in the late rounds, but you're not paying for the elites. So you're just getting two in this little window in between. Both Tua and Herbert can run high, touchdown rates and are good enough players that they could have the efficiency. We got them both stacked with, pretty key pieces for their upside, I think. In Tua's case, obviously, Tyreek is a huge part of his upside case. In Herbert's case, Ladd McConkey being a hit as a rookie who we've already invested in would, I think, definitely elevate Herbert's profile. We're talking about at pick 142, and we've already invested in Ladd McConkey being a hit. I think Herbert's an obvious hit at that point if you're thinking about that path for the Chargers season. So, that's a great call. I love that. Lloyd, it's a bummer. It would have been nice to grab him, but you still have Kendrick Miller. You still have Jalen Wright. You still have all those names that you mentioned.
Yep.
I think it's another running back pick here.
Not Miller, because we have the 2 week 12 buys already at running back, I'd say. So do you have a preference between Chandler and Wright?
It tends to be Wright for me for the pure ceiling. I could definitely see Chandler.
We do have the stack with Tua also.
Oh, yeah.
And Tyreek.
Because we have the Tua Tyreek stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I always like taking the backup running back when I have the passing stack, because it's like, okay, well, the team's running plans didn't work out. Like Achane got hurt.
Yep.
That probably means more pass volume.
That too. Yep.
And it also means Jalen Wright's playing. It's a correlated, like, okay, this is a path to their season going a certain way that is good for both sides of it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's funny that you say that you wouldn't have even thought of Herbert there. I feel like we come at this from different like strengths, where like I don't consider myself like I'm a moderate ball knower, but I'm not like a hyper ball knower. I'm not super confident in my player take. So I'm always just like, I'm OCD about getting my stacks, like building the right structure. So I'm always looking for like that right structure. Whereas you, I would say, are an elite ball knower. So you're just like, I want to get my guys. So you're immediately like, yeah, give me.
And then at the end, I'm like, oh God, I didn't build any stacks into this team. I mean, that's why I love doing doing ship chasing with Pat and Pete.
Yeah,
I always say it, but I think those guys are incredible at that as well. I think you're great at it too. But those two are, I mean, Pete especially drafts with so many different people. If you watch his streams, I'm sure everyone does. They know that he's so good at that. keeping an eye on the stacks, keeping an eye on the correlations, all that stuff. I get lazy because I don't do a lot of the fast drafts on my own, and I get a draft with those guys, and so they're the ones figuring all that out for me every time. I'm just telling them the player takes. So I definitely miss that stuff when I guest on other people's pods and stuff. So I'm glad that you're on top of that.
Yeah, always. And I feel like the last time I was not as much on top of it as I usually am because we were having conversation. I was like, oh shit, we're getting late, and like we only have one quarterback. And I'm also just like a little bit OCD about getting my stacks early. Like I'm always thinking about the stack like from the very beginning. So I'm usually like I think I end up overdrafting elite quarterbacks just for the sake of like, all right, get them with a stack, or like elite to like, if you can consider like Kyler Murray in that range. It's like, oh, I've got Marvin Harrison. Now I really want Kyler Murray, get that stack out of the way, get one done, like just like start working on the correlations early. So it's kind of funny the different approaches to BBM. But I
totally get that, man.
Yeah.
I have that same urge, dude. Because that's the other thing about Pat and Pete is those guys will pass the quarterback off and try to get as like best value as possible.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm always like, I just want to get this locked
Just get
up.
it done.
If I do
Me
think
too,
about
me
it,
too.
now I want to
Yeah.
lock it up. Like,
yeah. Someone made a joke on a stream I was on yesterday, I think. Like, oh yeah, Neil's never going to let his quarterback go to the next round. He's never pushing the quarterback, and it's like that's largely true. Like there are some cases where like CJ Stroud. Like I'm not going to take CJ Stroud at 52. Typically, I'll push it. Hope that he falls back to me around ADP. Typically,
because if he doesn't, you're still early going. You can find
it's like you can find back stacks there. Like there are ways to work around it. But like once you get into these later rounds, it's like if you don't have your stack, you better reach a little bit, get your stacks out of the way. You don't want to be stuck with a unstacked Justin Fields or whatever your last option of last resort would be in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
We are at 2-4-5-2 currently, so I think we're in a good position as far as optionality goes. Tua, Justin Herbert at quarterback, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, Chase Brown, Jalen Wright. We have Tyreek Hill, Malik Neighbors, Devontae Smith, JSN, Lad McConkey, Mark Andrews, Brock Bowers. We could be done at the onesies. Potentially, we could add another quarterback later if we want to. But I feel like we're in a good position as far as having some options here. Your guy Bucky Irving is there with the Week 11 bye. If you wanted to do that. We do have.
He's yelling at me, man. He's using neon letters right now. I think the receivers that are here are interesting, but I think we can hit the receiver coming back at 1503. There's a few of them that I like. Bucky's the pick. I love that pick there.
So my late round value running back that I've been hammering is Khalil Herbert, and
I like him too. Yeah, I take a decent amount. I take all three of the Bears backs.
Good.
And I think there's reasons for like my read is that I think Roshan's kind of the more pure contingency back because he's a really good pass blocker and he's more the receiving and like high value touch guy. But I think Khalil Herbert's more of the standalone backup where he's going to have early down rushing stuff and he's a value. I think they're all values. Like I think DeAndre Swift's kind of a value too. Like they paid him a good amount of money. They're going to use him and he's going to catch more passes than he did last year. I think he's going to get a little bit more usage in the goal line area or not. More usage because he got a decent amount last year. He didn't score really any touchdowns. He kept getting tackled at the one, but I think he will have a few more touchdowns this year. I think it'll run hotter for him. But anyway, yeah, I think the Bears as a backfield, like they got great receivers. Like defenses are going to be in those like cover two shells. They're going to be putting more DBs on the field. There's going to be room for the running backs to move around. So all these dudes made it back. I'm fine with Mims again. I'm fine with Luke McCaffrey. I'm fine with Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm like Wan'Dale Robinson, like as a dude, I definitely take a lot of, and it sets up a little Daniel Jones thing, who I take a lot of. His ADP is a little higher, so maybe we get lucky with one of the Denver guys coming back, and we just took him in the last draft. So yeah,
do you have a preference between Wan'Dale and Mims?
I usually go Mims, but let's go Wan'Dale on this one. We did Mims on the last one. I think also buy wise was 11 better than 14. No, we already had 11. Oh, we already had Malik Neighbors. I guess.
Oh, hell yeah.
We are thinking.
Yeah. I like that now.
I don't hate that. Yeah. No, I like that too. It does make me think that Daniel Jones is a fun add to this build.
For sure. I liked your point on your stream. I don't know if I think it was today, about Daniel Jones being a very solid pick in the eliminator format, which I agree with. I think that's he's somebody that I've just started doing my eliminators for this year, but I thought that was a very good point that he's like in other formats you like him even better, but also viable here. Like what if he is just like, if they do play well this year, maybe he does play the entire season. You don't have to worry about him sitting during the playoffs if things go the way that you're expecting them to when you draft Daniel Jones. So yeah, I think it makes sense for this team for sure.
And I mean, if they're benching him late in the year, they're admitting that they're about to fight. They're going to get fired, basically.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I think Dable and the GM are at that point, like, they're going to be on the hot seat at that point. So I don't know. I think they're going to probably play him. I also don't think they're definitely going to cut Daniel Jones. Like, the other part of the Russell Wilson example is that Russell Wilson was, owed a big chunk of his 2025 salary. It was going to be guaranteed in the third day of the league year this year. And I mean, I've been talking about this since last offseason, as soon as Sean Payton took over, that he was going to cut Russell Wilson after one season, based on the way that Russ's contract was written. It was like a $37 million future commitment that had to be made at the end of 2023. And his 2022 was so bad that there was no way his 2023 could be good enough that they would make that additional commitment. And so in season, when they finally decided to bench him, it was like, yeah, because they're moving on from him. I'm not convinced that the Giants are like, we're definitely moving on from Daniel Jones after this year. Like, if he has a pretty good year and things are going okay, but not great, but it's good enough that, like, Dable doesn't get fired, like, maybe they're keeping him through 2024. Like, they still have a lot of, like, dead money on that contract. Actually, I mean, excuse me, through 2025. Like, there's still, like, they can cut him and they can, I'm looking at it now. There's about $22 million in dead money that would be on the contract for 2025 or 2026. That's a lot. But I mean, it's not impossible for a quarterback, but it's a lot. So anyway, I think it's possible that they would want to continue to move forward with him. He's under contract for 2 more years as it stands. It's also possible that they're wanting to cut him after 2024, but they just signed him last offseason. Like, they think he's their guy.
And he was pretty damn good 2 years ago.
Right. If he has a pretty good year this year, like, you're back in that same situation with why they signed him last offseason. We're like, well, what are we going to find that's better, you know? Yep. And Dable's like, I get fired if I move on from him. Like, I've tied my
so Mims makes it all the way back.
Yeah, I love it.
I don't hate that. Then we have our choice between, if we want to add on another quarterback. I mean, we obviously have the double stack with Jones. Then we could also.
That was the little tiebreaker for Wandale. It's just the ADP, and like, maybe Mims would come back. I didn't actually expect him to, but
me too. Yeah,
pretty nice. He's got the week 17 thing with Chase Brown. We get a little mini in there. I love the Bengals Broncos stuff because I'm playing the Broncos backs. I'm playing, the Bengals backs. I often have Chase or Higgins in my build. I'm willing to take both Mims and Franklin late. So I wind up with a lot of the Bengals Broncos little mini correlation things. What do we have for bringbacks with our quarterbacks?
So we
don't have a Cleveland guy. Yeah, we don't have a New England guy.
So none. So we are
looking
lacking
good.
in week 17 again. Yeah.
But I do think the pick here is probably the RB6. Whether I think it's probably, you like Khalil Herbert. I think that's a strong pick here. It doesn't match any of our buys.
Oh yeah. And then just push the bring back quarterback again.
Yeah, let's push that to the late 18. If we don't get a third quarterback, we don't get a third quarterback. But I do think we want another running
Foreman
back
if we wanted to. For the Miami.
I'm not super into Foreman. There's a lot of players. So I don't think Deontay Foreman's actually going to make the team. I don't know why there was a lot of hype on him in the early offseason from the fantasy community. He doesn't have a ton of guaranteed money. Pierre Strong has gotten a ton of hype for being a key special teams guy. In fact, the Athletic article I read about that was like, he's one of 2 players that is basically a lock to make the final roster because of special teams. So, like, expect Pierre Strong on the final roster. He's that important of a special teams player. They didn't really give Deontay much guaranteed money. If he does make the team, and he very well still might, my expectation would be it would be with Nick Chubb out, on PUP or whatever. But when Nick Chubb comes back, that there's a possibility he gets cut like in season, because they also brought in Nyheim Hines, who very well could play, factor into the special teams equation as well. And you have Jerome Ford, and you have Nick Chubb, and you have Pierre Strong. And it's like, there's like 7 dudes, and Deontay Foreman got this like vet minimum contract with very little guaranteed, a couple $100,000 guaranteed. And I know he was like still solid last year, but he is a former Achilles, he's like the comeback success story for Achilles guys, but like, how much longevity do you think he's going to have in his career? He is on the like upper side of his 20s. I don't know how old he is exactly. Yeah, 28. Just turned 28 in April. I mean, there's too many players in that backfield for me to be in on trying to pick. That's where you get the dead roster.
Are you out on all? Are you out on like Ford also?
I haven't been taking a lot of Ford either, but I think Ford's the best pick. Like Ford's the one that leads the backfield in the early part of the season. The bigger reason I haven't been taking a lot of Ford is like it's the opposite of backweighted. We're always talking about backweighted production in these tournaments where like the weeks 15 and 16 and 17 matter so much. Ford, it feels like front weighted production. He's going to be good in the first half of the year. And then Nick Chubb's going to fall on his head at some point. Like I do think Nick Chubb comes back and plays a little bit this year.
So do you draft Chubb then for the late
I
season?
have drafted Chubb when he's fallen crazy far.
I draft him occasionally, but it's been pretty rare for me.
It's sort of like the answer to these questions is it's sort of like there's a lot of paths where it could go, and none of the bets feel like very strong ones. And there's a lot of paths where like a lot of different guys are doing different stuff throughout the season. And it's just like, I don't want to make any bets in the Browns backfield. I'm just going to avoid them all, like, yeah, I could definitely see one of them or multiple of them being right to the answer of that question. But anyway,
doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel good clicking them now. Maybe it'll feel better in August. Like maybe we'll have a clearer picture of the running back situation, but yeah,
for sure. We got to figure out what we're going to do here because both the quarterbacks went and Javon Baker went. So we don't have a Patriot bring back like receiver to throw on or anything, do we?
I mean, there's always Patriots.
Kendrick Bourne. I don't usually take Kendrick.
Or Chris Osborne. Or I don't know.
Who are the like top by ADP? Like what would it's probably a receiver.
I'm gonna throw these guys in queue.
Sure.
Here's by Q by ADP. Receiver.
Oh, DJ Chark. Let's throw DJ Chark onto the Herbert thing. I actually think he could play a decent amount. We didn't take either of the other two outside receivers. We took McConkey. So like Joshua Palmer and Quentin Johnston. Like I think Chark's the backup to those two. If either of them doesn't really work, if Quentin Johnston doesn't really work, and that McConkey's probably going to play in the slot. So like if Quentin Johnston, I think Quentin Johnston's going to get a lot of run and get a lot of routes, and I've definitely taken a decent amount of him. But Chark's like a backdoor. Like, well, what if Quentin Johnson has another really bad season like he did last year, right? Like, what if he doesn't take the step forward? Well, maybe they start playing DJ Chark.
Yeah, he's DJ Chark. Last year was one of my highest exposed players, and scored me like 0 fantasy points, and then went off as soon as all my teams were eliminated. Had that amazing, I think week 16 was when DJ Chark finally went off. I had some teams left. None of my DJ Chark teams made it to week 16. So that was brutal for me last year. Hopefully this year he produces for us a little bit during the season while we still have him. If you want us to take a look at your team, let us know. We'll read our team first. We have Tua and Justin Herbert at quarterback. Did not get that third quarterback to come back to us, but I still think that's a perfectly cromulent quarterback room. We have Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, Chase Brown, Jalen Wright, Bucky Irving, and Khalil Herbert at running back. At wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, Malik Neighbors, Devonta Smith, JSN, Lad McConkey, Wan'Dale Robinson, Marvin Mims, DJ Chark. Tight end, Mark Andrews and Brock Bowers. We've got Tua with Jalen Wright and Tyreek Hill. We have Justin Herbert with
Lad and Chark.
Yep. And then we have do we have no bringbacks again on either of these?
Yeah, once again, no bringbacks.
Which again, I'm going
to go to the week 16 schedule again, and I'm going to tell you about all the
we'll find something. That was so part of my hesitation early on to. I was a late adopter of the week 17 bringback thing. Was I kind of assumed that I would get more of those without trying. Just like, well, you have 18 picks, you're going to get more, and it's like that happens a lot less than I assume it will. Really like if you don't think about it, you do have to try if you want those bringbacks. But at the end of the day, it's not.
So we do get week 16 Marvin Mims bring back and Javonte Williams. Our two Broncos are week 16 bringbacks on Justin Herbert. We got a super stack Chargers Broncos week 16 game. So I mean, I'm just saying
that game's going to go off, get us to the championship, and then we're just going to have the right one-offs here. None of the games are going to go off. We're just going to have the right one-offs. It can work.
It can definitely work.
Yeah. No, but I like our stacks. We have double stacks with both of our quarterbacks. Are you since we took two, I didn't even think about it because we took our tight end so early. Sometimes I like to throw on Jonnu when I have an elite tight end like Mark Andrews. So sometimes I'll break away from like going Bowers there. Are you into Jonnu Smith at all? Do you try and do you like him if you have Tua? Anything to that?
The short answer is I'm not really into him. It was a
Okay.
career year for him last year. If you go look at his numbers, it was a career high in targets, career high in yardage. He's not like he really underwhelmed after signing the big contract with the Patriots, and then eventually got cut after 2 years there. I think he can have like a 500-yard season. He had 582 yards last year. It was his first ever 500-yard season. He had 70 targets, first 70 target season, 50 catches, first 50 catch season. He's a 29-year-old going into his age 29 season. I think people think that he's probably a little more than he is, because I've had people kind of push back and be like, he's definitely an upgrade on Durham Smythe and all this stuff. And I think he is an upgrade on Durham Smythe. But the issue is Mike McDaniel's offense is the most concentrated in the NFL. Like, he knows how to get the ball to the players he wants to get it to. He brought in Jonnu, but what you need is not just Jonnu to be the number 3. You need the offense to shift in a way where the number 3 actually gets volume now.
Right.
And I don't know that he's that good. Like, I think he can have a 500-yard season, which would be fine for a late round tight end, but I just don't see any paths to him getting to where it's like a meaningful pick in the late round.
I think part of it was the Mike McDaniel's quote. Like, people assume that what it has been is what it's always going to be, whatever. And I think that was after a question about Jonnu Smith. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That's at least what a lot of us read into it, is like, well, maybe he's saying they're going to get Jonnu more involved, but like it's worked with the offense has been working with the concentrated offense.
I mean,
so
that would be
that's
sweet.
A fair point.
Yeah, it would be cool to see. Literally, I just pulled up their Pro Football Reference page. Last year, their receiving yardage leaders were Tyreek Hill with 1799, Jalen Waddle with 1,014, and Durham Smythe was third with 366 receiving yards.
Right.
That was third.
You need to shift. We need to shift for something.
We needed to double. The third guy needs to you need him to get to 700 receiving yards, not 350. Like, that's. And the year prior, the third guy was Trent Sherfield with 417. Mike Gesicki was behind that at 360. Like, I get it. Like, but I my case isn't that Jonnu Smith's bad. I think he's actually underrated. But it's that, like, what he did last year was a career high. He's never shown an ability to like put up massive seasons like this, and it's probably tough for him to break that mold.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe he will.
That's fair. Non-derogatory, I should say.
Yeah, non-derogatory.
I like Jonnu, but he's usually more like a 3 tight end build for me. Or sometimes if I have Tua, I'll take him, but not when you already have Mark Andrews and Brock Bowers. Like, he's still on this team. Didn't make any sense, even for a third tight end. Ben says that he wants a review of our team. Says, I like my team, but Neil won't like my RB room. I'm curious if that means that he has like overlapping buys too much. What does this mean, Ben? I'll look at Ben's first. Ben has Brock Purdy, Bo Nix, and Derek Carr at quarterback. At running back, he has Bijan Robinson, Joe Mixon, Tyjae Spears, Jaleel McLaughlin, Antonio Gibbs. Oh, he does have the 3 week 14 buys.
14 buys out of 5 running backs.
You are correct, Ben. That I have concerns about that. Wide receiver, he has Brandon Ayuk, DJ Moore, T. Higgins, Jameson Williams, Cortland Sutton, Rashid Shaheed, Ricky Pearsall, Luke McCaffrey. At tight end, Kyle Pitts and Cade Otton. So he has Brock Purdy with Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall. I like that. He has Bo Nix with Jaleel McLaughlin, Cortland Sutton. Looks good. And then he has Derek Carr with Rashid Shaheed. Just Rashid Shaheed. Looks pretty good to me. You are correct. Like, you read it right that I don't love the 3 week 14 running backs, but you do have Bijan Robinson, Tyjae Spears, pretty strong running backs to fill in as long as they're healthy.
Right. If you're gonna do it, it's the later round guys that you're not even expecting to line up most weeks anyway, and like a lot of their buys, right? Like,
so it's not the end of the world. It's not my favorite thing, but it can certainly work with those two filling in. Any other notes on this one, Ben?
No, I think it's a pretty solid team. Yeah, I was actually texting my wife. I didn't really pay attention to the game. I'm not going to lie.
Do you have, I'll ask you a specific question. Are you less inclined to draft? I guess you already said you're not really expecting Ayuk to be traded anyway. Sometimes I'm like, well, the best out for Ricky Pearsall is if Ayuk is traded. So like, I'm a little bit more inclined to draft him with Debo than with Ayuk as like that secondary receiver. But I'm probably galbraining it a little bit too much, because at the end of the day, Ayuk's probably not getting traded anyway. Is that something you think about at all? The like correlations of like, well, this player's best case scenario is if this guy gets traded or if this guy gets hurt, like then sometimes I'm less inclined to play them together.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I don't think I would have taken Pearsall on a team that already had Ayuk. I think you're thinking, and it has Purdy, and is stacking
Yeah, it
up
has
the
Purdy.
Niners in that
Yep,
path. Like Purdy's upside is, in part he's a drop back passer. It's in part tied to Ayuk being a really efficient downfield player again this year, and so yeah, I think that cuts into Pearsall's upside cases. And Pearsall to me would be a better pick when you don't have access to the Niners offense yet, and then you're
sure.
hedging against
Multiple outs.
the other guy's getting injured, right? But if you
Right.
already have a Purdy Ayuk stack, then Pearsall's like not playing this year, right? Like you're saying the offense is good, because I do think he's kind of just a contingent play for his rookie season, and a look to the future play from them, in the sense that I don't think, Ayuk can be on the team long term. They got to
Right.
eventually pay Purdy and all of that stuff, but they're going to keep him short term because they are in a rookie QB window and they want to win a Super Bowl. Like why would they just give up a huge piece towards the potential for 2024 being a Super Bowl season for them? So,
Yep.
yeah.
So it's something. There's something to it at the very least. That maybe they're not the best pairing, but I do like a double stack in general. Um, Jeremy wants to see the icon. I know you're texting your wife, which is generally a good indication that you got to get going pretty soon. But we will
No, not a
we do
major
this.
issue, but
Okay.
yeah, I was like, yeah, sorry, I don't have anywhere to go with the analysis here because I
Yeah.
wasn't paying attention.
We've all been there. We've all been there on these streams. All right, we'll go. Jeremy's quick.
The
I
one
think
thing
that was
about me, Neil, as I'm sure you figured out, is I'll just tell you what I'm thinking. So if
yeah.
it's
I
I'm not paying
appreciate that.
attention, I'll tell you that. Most
That's
people try to play through it. I'm not going to play through it. I'll just tell you I
yeah.
wasn't paying attention.
More entertaining if you're just forthright. You just let us know. I mean, it can be entertaining watch people trying to like struggle with analyzing a team they haven't looked at, but no,
Yeah.
I appreciate the forthright answer there. All right, we'll take a look at the Icons team and then we will probably head out. I don't think we had anybody else. I'll look one more time. The Icon goes Jordan Love and Matthew Stafford at quarterback, Kyron Williams, DeAndre Swift, Zeke Elliott, Nick Chubb, Ray Davis, J.K. Dobbins at running back. Wide receiver Puka Nacua, Drake London, Jaden Reed, Jordan Addison, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, Demarcus Robinson, Michael Wilson, and at tight end, Trey McBride and Dawson Knox. So he's got Jordan Love with Jaden Reed and Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs. Does have Jordan Addison bring back as well on that one. He has Matthew Stafford with Kyron and Puka Nacua. He does have multiple
And
bring
Demarcus
backs.
Robinson.
And Demarcus, yeah, good call. And Demarcus Robinson, Trey McBride, Michael Wilson bring back. So he does the big game stacks for week 17 once again. I fall into this trap sometimes with the Green Bay receivers. Like I think I've drafted a team with all four of them before, which is definitely wrong. Drafting all four of them, like, or if I think it's pretty likely
If
to be very wrong.
if there's
Maybe not
any
definitely.
team you do it on, it might be the Packers,
I
honestly,
know
though.
it's like
Yeah.
if they do just continue the like 70%, snap share for all of them kind of thing, then it's like I guess it could work. They have alternating weeks, but probably wrong. Probably wrong to take all four. What do you
But
think of this
so
team?
you mentioned this a bit ago on my streams. Every episode, I spin the wheel and we land on a specific team, and then I kind of break down my thoughts about that team for 2024. And we got the Packers earlier on my stream today, and I
Yep.
didn't do a great job of breaking it down, in part because there was something I was trying to remember. I was like, that's kind of my take on the Packers, and I couldn't figure out what it was. But the take was, if you're in on Love, because I spent a lot of time talking about Love and whether or not there's a little bit of risk with him. I think he's probably a good quarterback. He had a great year, second half of the year,
Right.
particularly a worse first half. But part of my argument was we don't have a huge sample on him, and those drop back passers. You are looking for the spike TD rate, and he had that last year. Does he maintain it? But my argument is, if you are in on Love and you're saying the spike TD rate is going to come back, you're probably in on all the Packers for best ball. So that was the take that I didn't do a good job of saying on my own stream, was that I think all the Packers receivers, if you're in on this offense, are like better in best ball types, where they're
True.
all young dudes. I was talking a lot about this. They're all at minimum in their third season. We're not entirely sure how the routes are going to break down. Wicks could play in early. He could take over from Dobbs. I think if Dobbs is running a lot of routes, you look at what he did in the postseason, he can have some spike games. But I think they'll all also disappear at times. Reed's probably the most stable, but like Watson's going to disappear at times, then probably some spike games. I think Dobbs is probably going to do the same. Wicks is probably going to do the same. They've kind of built this young receiving core to be that way. And so if Love is the drop back passer with the strong TD rate that's facilitating, and then you have spike weeks scattered throughout from the other guys, it's one of the passing games where I think, it makes the most sense to really
Yeah.
overstack, because it probably is all of them at different times. They're all kind of just better and best ball spike weeks popping up here and there. It's all dependent on Love being right. But if you take Love, then take three of
you
these
made the bet.
receivers. Go for it.
Yeah, it's a good call. Maybe it does work out with 3 of those receivers. Of course, does not get Dontavian Wicks, who is, if you know ball, then you're drafting Dontavian Wicks over Romeo Doubs. But yeah, I think that is a good point. Yeah, definitely all better in best ball. I can't think of, like, even Jaden Reed. Am I going to be like week 1? I wouldn't be comfortable playing Jaden Reed. Maybe he plays into that role by like week 5, where he becomes a season long kind of guy where you're comfortable playing him. But yeah, going into the season, you don't particularly
these
love
guys are not going to be fun to roster in season long.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, if
but
things
best ball,
go,
sure, go for it. You're betting on the offense, right?
Yeah. And then he has the Stafford, Puka, Kyron, DeMarcus, and then 2
Fun team,
bringbacks.
concentrated route shares over there, concentrated snap shares. Rams are another team that I have no issue stacking within the realm of, like, they brought back Demarcus Robinson. He took over the Tutu Atwell wide receiver 3 role because he run blocks. They like him. They brought him back on like a $4 million, $5 million contract, 1-year deal. He's an older guy, but they paid him. I mean, that's like a solid deal for what Demarcus Robinson is at this point in his career. They're like, we want you to come back because we like your run blocking. We know you can play every snap. And so he's a part of their main 11 personnel, right? It's those 3 dudes. I don't know necessarily who the tight end will be early in the year, but those 3 dudes and Cup are going to be the core of the Rams offense. They're not going to do a lot of rotating. And so that's an offense where, I mean, because it's so concentrated, you can definitely stack it up. I like that stack too. I mean, this is a fun one where the stacks make more sense to me. They're both drop back passers. There's not the mobility issue we talked about with the other quarterbacks. They're going to facilitate to the players that are in the offense. You're betting on the offenses, but you're also betting on in 2 different ways. You're betting on one being concentrated, on the other being unconcentrated, but having spike weeks littered throughout. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a very solid build. Takes a couple of these like injured older running back, J.K. Dobbins, Nick Chubb, both make this team. I guess Zeke not even injured, a lot of dusty, but he gets the hero with Kyron Williams.
Zeke can handle the first half of the year until he runs out of gas, and then Nick Chubb,
and then Nick Chubb comes
hopefully.
in. A lot of looks like a pretty solid team. That's 1, 2, 6, 8. It feels like so many receivers, but I guess just 8. Looks good. All right, we made it. Oh, sorry. Jack Mitchell says, could you take a look at my team if you guys have the time? Yeah, we can do that real quick. I like this comment. What if Bo Melton is a guy you need? I do worry about that sometimes. Like, I have not drafted Bo Melton, but there's always that risk. Jack Mitchell from the 12 hole goes Lamar Jackson, Drake May, Bryce Young at quarterback. At running back, James Cook, Ramondre Stevenson, Jonathan Brooks, Roschon Johnson, Keaton Mitchell. At wide receiver, Marvin Harrison, Nico Collins, Zay Flowers, Xavier Worthy, Xavier Legette, Jalen Polk, Quentin Johnston. At tight end, Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz, Hunter Henry. So he's got Lamar with Zay Flowers. Just Zay Flowers. Schultz bring
and
back.
Nico bring back.
And so he's got the game stack going, and
Keaton
Mitchell on there as well.
Yeah.
He has Drake May with Ramondre and Jalen Polk and Hunter Henry. And is it the Chargers?
Yeah, Quentin Johnston's the bring back there.
Quentin Johnston, yep. And then Bryce Young with Jonathan Brooks and Xavier Legette.
No bring back. But yeah, I dig it. My worry here is the 5 running back build with Jonathan Brooks and Keaton Mitchell both coming back from ACL tears.
Sure.
And Mitchell is one that I like as a bring back. I think he's a really underrated bring back on Houston stuff, because you're probably not going to get him for the first half of the year, but he's also probably just a contingency bet on Derrick Henry getting hurt anyway. And so you're really saying, like, by the time he's back, or even before then, Derrick Henry suffers an unfortunate injury like running backs can. And then Mitchell works into being the upside back that takes over the large part of the backfield by week 17. Then he's the bring back, and then he's the lead back in the end of the season. It's harder for me. Like in this build, he wouldn't have been my favorite. I don't think he makes a ton of sense to stack with Lamar, in the sense that, like, he's not even going to be their back for most of the year. Although, I mean, maybe a little bit from the perspective we were talking about. If Henry goes down, it benefits pass rate and it benefits Keaton Mitchell, right? It can correlate in that way. But with Jonathan Brooks already on this roster, I think Brooks is going to have a hard time playing a lot early in what's probably a building season for Carolina. They drafted him to be, I think, the running back of the future. They can't cut Miles Sanders, way too much dead money. They still have Chuba and Sanders. Don't know why they would rush Jonathan Brooks back from an ACL tear that was like late October or maybe even November of last year. I think you see Jonathan Brooks play a lot down the stretch, and I take him and I like him in builds as a back-weighted production kind of guy. I think they really let him loose and let him be the lead back for the last 6 to 8 weeks. But I do think you got to be aware that there's a possibility he doesn't play a lot for the first 8 games. Like it just let him be rehabbing and be 100% healthy before they really let him loose. Maybe it won't be that long. And I've had some other, smart analysts disagree with me on that timeline. But I do think, you look at when he tore the ACL and the fact that Carolina's not going to be hyper competitive, that they probably back weight it, which is probably like, for me, is an argument for drafting him.
Right. Because overall, it's a good argument.
Then they might just be using him a ton in the fantasy playoffs, which is great. But in a 5 running back build where you took him, then Keaton Mitchell, it's a lot to put on James Cook and Ramondre Steven and Roschon for the first 7 or 8 weeks. You might not. It might just be a 3 running back build for 7 or 8 weeks, the bulk of the regular season. So that's a tricky one.
Yeah, I guess I like that you have week 12 and week 14 buys for your first 2 running backs if you're going to go Brooks and Keaton, but it does feel a little bit thin. Like you really need things to go right. No injuries early on in the season to those guys for this to really work out. All right, that is going to do it. We did both for our streams. I've got some disc golf that I need to get to pretty soon. Ben, where can people find you? What else do you have going on? And of course, thank you so much for coming on. This is a lot of fun. I've been meaning to reach out for a long time. Basically since last year when I watched the stuff with Leone, I was like, I really want to talk with Gretch, and really, really happy to finally get you on the stream. Was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on.
Well, man, I really appreciate you having me. It's been a blast. The chat's been great. This is a lot of fun on my end as well. We got the flannel going.
Yeah.
You can find me at Ship Chasing, as you mentioned, at Stealing Bananas with Sean Siegel is my other main podcast. And then on my YouTube channel, Stealing Signals. And then at the Stealing Signals newsletter, which is bengretch.substack.com. That's a premium newsletter. That's like my main source of income. And it's where I write all my stuff, where my rankings are. It's where you'll get the best of me. I reserve it for the people that pay me directly. So bengretch.substack.com. That's the spot.
Hell yeah. And I haven't even really talked up your slow draft streams. Like we've alluded to them a couple times, but Ben, it's a new thing that he's been doing this summer. Ben has been doing slow draft streams where he comes on in the morning. He'll have 8 picks to make in slow drafts, and then he spends 4 hours with you making those picks, talking through whatever there is to talk about.
And then I'm on the clock in more drafts as I keep talking.
And then it's like, oh shit, I have 10 minutes to make this pick. I had 2 hours when I started talking about it. Now I have 10 minutes left to make this pick. But it is a good time, good stream of consciousness from Ben. Go make sure you go check out his channel. I believe I've already put the link in the description of this video to the YouTube channel. But go check out the channel, check out Ben's Substack. A lot of good content from Ben. All right. Thank you, Ben. Once again, thank you to the rest of you for hanging out with us. If you haven't already done so, please do like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Would appreciate it. And if you're looking for another Discord, got a Discord to the Flannelverse. The link is in the description for that as well. It's a good time. Thanks, guys. Catch you next time.